Chapter 1034. Wine Tasting. Tianyang said tentatively. If Wu Qingshun and Jin Daoping were competing with this young man in terms of primordial spirit power, primordial spirit attack techniques, alchemy, or even setting up arrays, he would believe it. However, wine tasting, what was this? That's right. Hearing this, Yao Yaoi nodded with a cold smile on his face. You're indeed a country bumpkin from the Dongxin Prefecture. You don't even know about wine masters Shao and Black Phoenix wine. Shao and Black Phoenix wine is a specialty of Shao and restaurant. It's also the best wine in the entire Dansine-ville. Yao Yaoi sneered with a hint of respect on his face. Wine master is a real lesser Saint Elixir Emperor. When he just stepped into the Elixir Emperor realm, he created the recipe for Shao and Black Phoenix wine. As for the little servant behind Master Geo, he opened a restaurant here after receiving the Mystic Phoenix wine formula as a reward. Supreme grade, middle grade, low grade. Even the low-grade Black Phoenix wine has a terrifying effect. If a Heaven Ascension realm expert consumes it, there's a 3% chance of entering a state of enlightenment. Even if he can't, he can quickly accumulate a large amount of true essence. If his realm is high enough, it's possible for him to break through immediately. Yao Yaoi said. Tianyang raised his eyebrows when he heard that. Shao and Black Phoenix wine is so mysterious? As for the middle-rank Mystic Phoenix wine, it's much stronger than the low-rank Mystic Phoenix wine. It contains hundreds of 6th grade and 7th grade spiritual herbs. It's a perfect blend. Alchemy cultivation, primordial spirit power, and identification of herbs are indispensable. The effect is to allow a rank 1 martial honorable to recover half of his true essence in an instant. As for the supreme grade Black Phoenix wine, it's something that can only be found by chance. When Yao Yaoi said that, the respect in his eyes turned into yearning. Only wine master or the owner of Shao and restaurant can brew a jar of supreme grade Black Phoenix wine. Only these two people know all the herbs of supreme grade Black Phoenix wine. It is said that there are tens of thousands of medicinal herbs in it. Other than the pill saint, no one can identify all of them. Yao Yaoi said, being able to taste 369 ingredients in the wine is already enough for me to look down on the entire medicine god sect. I won't make things difficult for you. As long as you can taste all the medicinal herbs of the middle grade Black Phoenix wine, I'll return the pill formula and quote it to you. Yao Yaoi said with a confident look on his face. Looking at Tianyang's previous appearance, it was clear that he had no idea what the Shao and Black Phoenix wine was. Back then, he was able to taste everything because he knew a part of it beforehand. That was why he was able to deduce the rest. Tianyang didn't know anything. What could he use to compete with him? This was also the reason why Yao Yaoi was so fearless. All right, Tianyang nodded. It seemed that the Dark Phoenix wine was indeed special. Tianyang waved his hand. A formless gust of wind blew past, and the sealing mud on the Black Phoenix wine was broken. It exuded an intoxicating fragrance. After smelling it, Wu Qingshun was almost intoxicated. Wu Qingshun raised his eyebrows. Was the quality of the middle-grade Black Phoenix wine so good? The jar that was used for the competition was not this strong. However, Wu Qingshun did not pay too much attention to it. Perhaps the Shaoan restaurant had always had such a middle-grade Black Phoenix wine, but they were just unlucky. The top-grade Black Phoenix wine was not something that Wu Zun could touch. It was a supreme treasure that only a sage-to-be or even a saint could enjoy. Even Yao Yaoi only showed a trace of surprise, and then a mocking smile appeared on his face. He knew, the higher the grade of the Black Phoenix wine, the higher the degree of fusion between the medicinal herbs. The more they fused, the harder it was to distinguish them. For example, the top-grade Black Phoenix wine had fused all the medicinal herbs perfectly and completely. It was extremely difficult to taste even one of them. Once it entered the mouth, there was only the natural sweet fragrance of the wine. If it was just a low-grade medium Dark Phoenix wine, Yao Yaoi was worried that Tianyang and the rest would fail miserably at such an easy task. But now, he was completely relieved. Even he might not be able to taste the Black Phoenix wine of this grade. Good wine. Tianyang's nose twitched slightly, and he showed a satisfied smile. In the Tianxiao great world, as a sword emperor, what kind of wine had he not tasted? He had even tasted a lot of the top-grade wines that were nurtured by the heavens and the earth, and mellow wines that had been stored for thousands of years. However, none of them could be compared to this jar of Black Phoenix wine. Then Tianyang waved his hand. A ball of flame appeared in his hand. In the jar, a stream of wine that was as clear as spring water flew out like a dragon and fell into the flame. The flame changed its shape slightly and turned into a wine bottle that was constantly fluctuating. Tianyang raised his head and drank it all. Suddenly, a terrifying energy exploded in his dantian. The divine, desolate, heavenly spirit art unconsciously began to circulate at an extremely fast speed. The 48,000 pores on his body all opened up, letting out extremely comfortable moans. This cup of wine could be said to be peerless. At this moment, Tianyang also circulated the power of the primordial spirit completely. The myriad pill tome that was quietly placed in Tianyang's body also began to circulate rapidly. Under the effect of the primordial spirit and the myriad pill tome, all the medicinal herbs in this cup of Black Phoenix wine were analyzed, and even the measurements were known clearly by Tianyang. He closed his eyes and analyzed. After a full 3 minutes, Tianyang regained his senses and opened his eyes. There was a glimmer of light in his eyes. Analyzing medicinal herbs was an action that consumed a lot of primordial spirit power. However, after drinking this cup of Black Phoenix wine, Tianyang's primordial spirit power was not only replenished, but also increased by a little. The results are out. Do you want to drink more? Seeing this, Wu Qingshun suddenly asked anxiously. The fate of the 7th grade high-tier pill formula and the quota for the treasured land will be decided with a single word from Tianyang. It's out. It's already the limit. Tianyang opened his mouth. A total of 81 types. Hearing this, the whole place was silent. Even the people who were talking about alchemy and martial arts quietened down and looked at Tianyang in disbelief. As for Yao Yaoi, he was also stunned. Then, a maniacal laughter burst out. Ha ha ha! Middle-grade Black Phoenix wine has at most 768 types of medicinal herbs. This is what the owner of Shao and restaurant said himself. The supreme-grade Black Phoenix wine only has about 10,000. 10,081? How is that possible? Speaking of big, you are too big. Yao Yaoi laughed crazily, and the people around also showed a trace of ridicule. 10,081 types? Middle-grade Black Phoenix wine? You really dare to say it. This 7th-grade elixir recipe belongs to me. Yao Yaoi laughed crazily, and Wu Qingshun, who was beside him, also felt deeply disappointed. He did not expect Tianyang to be such a person. The middle-grade Black Phoenix wine, which only had about 700 types of medicinal herbs, was exaggerated to 10,081. Wasn't this a little too fake? I misjudged. Jiang Lin sighed. No, it's 10,081 types. At this moment, a calm voice was heard. Who do you think you are? 10,081 types. I have 108,000 types. Hearing this, Yao Yaoi naturally retorted without even looking. However, when he saw the person who spoke, Yao Yaoi suddenly opened his mouth so wide that a duck egg could be stuffed in. Chapter 1035. You are... Yao Yaoi felt that his tongue was tied, and it was hard for him to distinguish the words that came out of his mouth. At the side, the crowd, who had just opened their mouths and wanted to ridicule him, could not make a sound as if their throats were blocked. They stared at the middle-aged man who suddenly appeared, and their hearts were in turmoil. The owner of Shao and restaurant, Tang Xiaoan. Little brother, at that moment, Tang Xiaoan smiled. He did not even look at Yao Yaoi and instead looked at Tianyang. A gentle and decent smile appeared on his face. I wonder if you really tasted the 10,081 herbs? Hearing that, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. So what if I did? So what if I didn't? Hearing that, the Shao and restaurant, which was dead silent, became quiet again. Tang Xiaoan, the owner of Xiaoan Restaurant, was the servant of wine master 1,000 years ago and had established his own restaurant. He was an expert at the peak of LV7 Wuzun realm. Even in Dansinaville, such an existence was extremely rare, and it was harder than ascending to heaven to meet one. In the end, he finally appeared, and the young man who was lucky enough to be questioned had such an attitude. If you do, that's great, but if you don't, that's even better. Tang Xiaoan smiled without any change in his expression. Hearing that, the crowd started to whisper. It said that the owner of Xiao and restaurant has always wanted to find Wine Master and follow him again. He even used the Dark Phoenix wine to increase his fame, just to find Wine Master. However, since Wine Master stepped into the absolute demon abyss 700 years ago, there's been no news of him. If this young man didn't taste the 10,081 herbs himself, then it can only be Wine Master. Hearing that, someone sighed. The owner of Xiaoan Restaurant is really loyal. It's a pity that your better friend is not with me. Hearing that, Tianyang shook his head and said lightly. Hearing that, Tang Xiaoan's eyes showed a trace of disappointment, but he still smiled and regained his composure. Then, I don't believe it. At this time, Yao Yaoi roared. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Tianyang. I don't believe that he really tasted 10,081 types of herbs. He must have heard it from someone else. Moreover, this medium-grade Black Phoenix wine only has 768 ingredients. This is what the Xiao and Tower Master said himself. How could there be 10,081 ingredients for tasting the middle-grade Black Phoenix wine? I don't believe it. I refuse to accept this. Yao Yaoi roared like a madman. Although the Medicine God School wasn't as influential as Banten Simyun in the Eastern Divine Prefecture, it was still a renowned Pill Dao faction. Although Yao Yaoi wasn't the successor of the Medicine God Gate, he still had a very high status. In his eyes, the Eastern Profound State's Pill Saint City was nothing but trash. Now he had been slapped in the face by a piece of trash from Dansinaville. That's true. Everyone nodded. The Tower Master had personally recognized 768 ingredients. How could there be more than 9,000 ingredients today? The dignified Xiao and Tower Master would not lie about this, right? That's right. Hearing that, Xiao and Restaurant Master smiled. Middle-grade Black Phoenix wine indeed only has 768 ingredients. Perhaps Lord Wine has more ingredients, but the Black Phoenix wine in my restaurant has 768 ingredients. Ha 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 ha. I knew it. Ha ha. But Tang Xiaoan smiled, who said that this is the medium-grade Black Phoenix wine. What? Yao Hui's laughter stopped abruptly. He said in disbelief, I ordered the medium-grade Black Phoenix wine. Little girl, don't hide it. At this time, Tang Xiaoan suddenly tilted his head and said to a corner. Hearing this, a little girl jumped out from the corner. What he was wearing was exactly the same as the waiter from before. I'm in a good mood today. I brewed the supreme grade Black Phoenix wine, but you stole it before I could drink it. You can't drink that much, so just return it to me. How could you give it to someone else? Tang Xiaoan rubbed the little girl's head and said in distress. The little girl smiled and didn't say anything. At the side, someone's pupils constricted as they recognized the little girl's identity. The disciple that Banten Simyun reserved, the one with the most potential in this myriad pill ceremony. Little Princess Tang? Little Princess didn't study alchemy and came here to be a waiter. Seeing this, Tianyang looked at the little girl thoughtfully. Her aura was only half a step away from Wuzun, but for some reason, the power of her primordial spirit was terrifyingly strong. Zhang Qingqing's primordial spirit power had surpassed her cultivation by a lot. She could already be considered a genius. However, the little girl's primordial spirit power was equivalent to Wuzun's 6th level. It was equivalent to Tianyang's. Moreover, she had condensed her primordial spirit in advance. She only lacked the accumulation of primordial qi to step into Wuzun's realm. There are really all kinds of strange things in this world. Tianyang shook his head, but he didn't care. He had his own opportunities, and others had their own opportunities. Although the little girl had the same primordial spirit power as him, Tianyang wasn't weak at all. There weren't so many tricks in the martial world. Talent was only a bonus. In a real battle, only one's own strength was possible. However, this primordial spirit feels a little independent. It seems that her opportunities aren't small. Tianyang chuckled. At this moment, Tang Shaoan turned his head and said with a smile, "Little brother, you're betting with this guy from the medicine god sect, right? If that's the case, do you want me to add fuel to the fire?" "What?" Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. "You tasted the 10,081 herbs of my Shao and restaurant's supreme grade black phoenix wine. I don't know if it's true or not, right?" Tang Shaoan said with a smile. "When I first established the restaurant, I set up the rules. If you can taste the herbs, you can receive a reward. If you can tell me half of the 10,081 herbs, then I'll give you a spot in the pure heaven's sacred land." Tang Shaoan said. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Pure heaven, sacred land? On the other hand, Wu Qingqian's pupils instantly constricted in disbelief. Pure heaven, sacred land? Quick, agree to it. This sacred land is much more powerful than the treasure land spots we obtained. Wu Qingqian urged, his face full of disbelief. Tang Xiao was really bold. He was even willing to give away such a place. Hearing this, Tianyang thought for a moment and nodded. Judging from the name and Wu Qingqian's reaction, it didn't seem to be something ordinary. Chapter 1036. Half an hour later, Tianyang calmly walked out from the top floor of Shao, and restaurant with a jade slip as thin as a cicada's wing in his hand. The jade slip looked extremely fragile. However, when Tianyang secretly circulated his true yuan to attack it, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. No matter how Tianyang attacked it, the jade slip would devour all of Tianyang's true yuan. The edges of the jade slip were extremely sharp. Even though Tianyang's physical body had reached the peak of the ancestral dragon body and reached the 7th tempering of the 9-tempered dragon body. However, the slightest touch would leave a trace of blood on his finger. Even Yang Feidao's quasi-saint flying dagger is far inferior to this jade slip in terms of sharpness. Tianyang muttered to himself and then put it into his space bag. If he were to encounter a dangerous situation and release the jade slip, he might be able to kill all of his opponents by surprise. Of course, it would be extremely difficult for Wu Zun to force Tianyang to such an extent. However, this Muddy Sky Sacred Land is quite interesting. It's just right before the Myriad Pill ceremony. I can use it to enhance the power of my primordial spirit. At this time, the value of this thing is far greater than at other times. Tang Xiao, and actually gave it to me directly. I'm afraid there's something else besides the promise. Tianyang chuckled, but didn't pay too much attention to it. It was nothing more than seeing a young man with potential and wanting to establish a good relationship with him in advance. Since he had paid such a price to befriend him, Tianyang naturally had to give him some face. The Myriad Pill scripture has done a good job this time. Tianyang smiled. If it weren't for the Myriad Pill scripture, his ability would have been limited to guessing 3,000 herbs. During this hour, the entire Shao and restaurant was in an uproar. Identifying 10,081 herbs of the supreme grade black phoenix wine was already enough to shock the entire Wandan Sinaville. Moreover, he had obtained a spot for the Muddy Sky Sacred Land from Tang Shaoan. The first part could only be regarded as news that shocked everyone. The second part could make any alchemist below the Pill Emperor go crazy. I didn't expect this. I really didn't expect this. Yao Yaohui's face was dejected, and his hands were already empty. Wu Qingqian's previous high-tier grade 7-pill recipe had been returned to Wu Zun. As for the medicine gatherings quota, it had been returned to Wu Zun, and this time, as a disciple of the medicine god sect, Yao Yaoi had lost, had been utterly defeated. He couldn't even guess all the ingredients of the high-grade black phoenix wine, but Tianyang directly tasted 1081 ingredients of the top-grade black phoenix wine. The gap between them was so huge that it was enough to make him despair. "What are you doing here?" At this moment, a cold voice, A rather handsome young man looked at Yao Yaoi indifferently. Eldest, eldest senior brother? When he heard this extremely familiar voice, Yao Yaohui's entire body instantly shuddered, and his dispirited expression vanished completely. Assess eyes. Eldest senior brother, you have to avenge me this time, Yao Yaoi shouted. The young man's expression did not change. I already know the cause and effect of the matter. This time, it's your own fault. You've lost, and there's nothing to say. If you insist on getting back at them, others will think that the medicine god sect can't afford to lose. The young man said indifferently. Yao Yaoi was happy to hear that. Based on his understanding of the young man, for him to say something like that, he must have his own plans. But, if they're going to the medicine gathering, why can't we go? We can afford to lose, but we'll lose to the Eastern Sky Divine Land or the other Divine Lands. Instead of losing to a nobody who came out of nowhere, the young man said coldly. Go back and accept your punishment, but before that, come with me to the medicine gathering. What's theirs is already ours. I can give it to them, but they can't take it. Hearing this, Yao Yaoi nodded excitedly. All right. Then, he immediately got up and followed the young man outside. He knew what level the person in front of him was at. There were 3 new talents in the myriad pill ceremony, other than little Princess Tang, who had acted as a waiter in Shao and restaurant. Yi Yuan, the eldest brother of the medicine god sect, was also one of them. With eldest brother here, those country bumpkins will die, for sure. You're not going to the medicine gathering? Tianyang raised an eyebrow and looked at Wu Qingshan. That's right. Wu Qingshan nodded. After fighting with Yao Yaoi, I know my own level. Although I'm qualified to participate in the myriad pill ceremony, I'm just barely qualified. If I really participate, it'll only make me laugh. That's why I've decided to cultivate in seclusion. I want to achieve better results in the myriad pill ceremony. Wu Qingshan said. Tianyang nodded slightly. He could see a surging fighting spirit in Wu Qingshan's eyes. Some people would not be able to recover from setback once they lost, and they would be mediocre from then on. On the other hand, some people would rise against the trend and charge toward the higher realm. It was obvious that Wu Qingshan was the latter. That's why I'll let you, Dao Ping, go with me. Dao Ping is more talented than me, so you're more suitable than me, Wu Qingshan said. However, although the medicine gathering is only a herb trade and pill exchange on the surface, it's inevitable that there will be villains who will make a move in the dark. If you go to the medicine god sect, you must be careful of them. Tianyang nodded slightly when he heard that. He could tell from Yao Yaohui's eyes before he left. That guy would not let the matter rest. The medicine gathering will start tomorrow. Master Yang, you've come from afar, so you should rest first. Wu Qingshan smiled. Tianyang nodded slightly and walked out. He held the entry pass that the people from the medicine gathering had just sent over. Make a move in the dark? He was waiting. The next day, the sun hung high in the sky. Dansinaville, which had never been quiet, was even noisier. 2 figures slowly walked out of Shao and restaurant. The same thing happened in other places. Countless young pill refiners with a certain level of fame stepped out of their doors and headed to the same place. The medicine gathering was held before every myriad pill ceremony. It was a place for the younger generation of pill refiners to communicate, improve, and learn from each other. At the medicine fair, countless medicinal herbs and treasures of heaven and earth were sold. It could be said that the medicine gathering was a smaller version of the myriad pill ceremony. It was a warm-up for the myriad pill ceremony. Big brother, we're going to the medicine gathering too? Beside Tianyang, Tang Xiaoan's daughter, who was called Little Princess Tang, asked curiously with her big watery eyes. Tianyang smiled and nodded when he heard that. Not far away, Yi Yuan's expression was cold. He glanced at Tianyang and strode out. Tianyang seemed to sense something and glanced to the side. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Chapter 1037. 10,000 Dansinaville, Lingxiao Pavilion. This was the center of 10,000 Dansinaville, and it was also the location where the medicine gathering was being held. Lingxiao Pavilion was not a restaurant like Shao and Restaurant. Instead, it was an extremely powerful place for cultivation. It was founded by a peak alchemist from Bantan Simyun, Wuzun. After 1,000 years, it became the current Lingxiao Pavilion. Normally, if one wanted to enter, they would have to pay a great price. But now, the medicine gathering was being held. The threshold of Lingxiao Pavilion was suddenly much higher. Many cultivators had gathered around. After all, this was Dansinaville. Cultivators who had great achievements in cultivation had high status, but the alchemist had the highest status. The medicine gathering gathered the most powerful young alchemists in all of Dansinaville. Look, it's Yi Yuan. He's one of the 3 rising stars. At this moment, someone exclaimed and looked at the young man who appeared in everyone's sight. The young man's face was cold, and behind him was a slightly shorter young man. The two of them looked indifferent as they went directly to Lingxiao Pavilion. They showed the proof in their hands and stepped into Lingxiao Pavilion without any hindrance. The Medicine God sect is indeed worthy of being called the Medicine God sect. One of the 3 rising stars 30 years ago was a disciple of the Medicine God sect. Now another one has come. As expected of the Eastern Sky Divine Land, a first-rate alchemy force second only to Bantan Simyun and other forces. Someone shook his head and sighed. The difference between forces was really different. Some people were born with a golden spoon in their mouths, while others were born rolling in mud. The most despairing ones were people like Yi Yuan, who had a powerful background and an extraordinary status. His talent was also terrifying. Yi Yuan is now about to become a peak 7th-grade alchemist. I'm afraid he'll be able to cultivate to the minor saint level before he's 500 years old. Someone exclaimed in admiration. Hearing this, the rest nodded silently. This kind of talent was really terrifying. At this time, a few more people appeared in front of Lingxiao Pavilion. It was as if Yi Yuan's appearance was a signal. In just a few minutes, countless rare genius alchemists had appeared in front of High Heaven Pavilion's entrance. It's Lin Lingfeng, an advanced 7th-grade alchemist. Isn't that Qinlin, who almost entered Bantan Simyun? Is that so? I didn't expect that he would actually come to participate in this medicinal gathering. The medicine gathering is a grand event for young people. It's a warm-up for the myriad elixir ceremony. It's not strange that Qinluan is here. However, I didn't expect the Tang's little princess to bring someone with her. What? Hearing this, everyone was stunned. She was the little princess of the Tang clan, Tang Xiaoan's daughter. Her status was so high that it was comparable to Yi Yuan's. Although Tang Xiaoan was only a servant of Wine Sage back then, his current achievements were unmatched in the entire Eastern Divine region. Let's not talk about the power behind Tang Xiaoan. Just talking about Xiao and restaurant and Black Phoenix wine in this myriad Dan sacred city, who would dare to say that they would not go? Luan es Tang Luan, Luan, little Luans, es Luanzin, es Luan had no friends. Luan to be. Chen Yi Luan. Who is it? Suddenly, someone's eyes turned red. Although the Tang family's little princess was just a little girl who had not fully matured yet, she was very talented. She was a woman with such great talent. Many people wanted to woo her. Even if they couldn't, their sons could do it. Now, someone had appeared beside the Tang family's little princess. I remember now. Yesterday, someone from a medicine god sect snatched a spot for the medicine gathering from an alchemy force outside the Eastern Sky Divine Land. This person is from that force. Yao we had already snatched the spot, but that person directly tasted all the herbs of the supreme grade Black Phoenix wine and snatched the spot back. Yi Yuan also said that he would teach him a lesson at the medicine gathering. Someone said. Hearing this, everyone was slightly stunned. News spread quickly in Dansinaville. However, cultivators often cultivated, so it was difficult for news to reach their ears. Moreover, it only happened yesterday. Everyone didn't know about it yet. However, they all knew about it now. They looked at Tianyang, who was beside Tang family's little princess, and the hatred in their eyes from before turned into pity. I see. No wonder Tang family's little princess talked to him. She probably told him because he's about to die. Tisk tsk, isn't it good to be alive? Why did he have to provoke that vengeful guy, Yi Yuan? Although he wasn't the one who was humiliated, the medicine god sect was slapped in the face this time. This kid will be skinned, even if he doesn't die. Everyone chuckled. As one of the three rising stars, Yi Yuan had a certain reputation in Dancineville. With that temperament, if Tianyang was targeted, it would be considered a light punishment. If Yi Yuan was angered, the force behind him would probably be implicated. Then, Tianyang's figure disappeared from Lingxiao Pavilion. The eyes of the person who announced Tianyang's identity flickered, and he quietly swallowed the words he was about to say. Tianyang might have a spot for the Muddy Heaven Sacred Land. Since they didn't know, then let me be the only one who knows. Lingxiao Pavilion actually has such a thing? Tianyang raised his eyebrows and looked at the center of Lingxiao Pavilion. There was a sword made of stone. Its tip was deep into the ground. It released an incomparably powerful aura. A stone sword. The moment Tianyang entered, he sensed a terrifying, murderous aura emanating from the stone sword. Lingxiao Pavilion was created by Sword Venerate Ling Xiao. Back then, Sword Venerate Ling Xiao relied on this sword to make a name for himself in Dancineville. It's not strange for Lingxiao Pavilion to have a sword, Jin Daoping said. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly and didn't reply. He was surprised, but not because there was a sword here. It was because of the sword itself. However, since they didn't know, then so be it. So, what is the purpose of this medicine fair? Tianyang glanced around. Hearing this, Jin Daoping was a little embarrassed. So Tianyang came without knowing anything? However, even Jin Daoping wasn't very clear. At this time, suddenly, a medicinal fragrance filled the air from one side of Lingxiao Pavilion. A slightly thin young man held a strange herb that looked like a bone in his hand and chuckled. Since no one wants to speak, let me start. This is the Dragon Bone 9-star leaf picked from the Dragon Clan's ruins and condensed the life force of Wu Zun of the Dragon Clan. Today, I'll take it out and exchange it for medicinal herbs. The thin young man smiled. Hearing this, the other's expressions changed slightly. Tianyang's eyes lit up. Chapter 1038. The Dragon Bone 9-star leaf. The skinny young man said. Apart from Tianyang, everyone else was stunned when they heard this. Then, a faint smile appeared on their faces. The Dragon Bone 9-star leaf? Yao Yaoi had a look of disdain on his face. Is this thing worthy of being called a medicinal herb? There's almost no pill formula that can refine it. Even if you absorb it directly, there's a risk of your body exploding. I'm afraid it's better to use it to refine weapons than to refine pills. You can't just throw a brick to attract jade. Yao Yaoi sneered. Hearing this, although no one said anything, the expression on their faces represented them. They didn't disagree with what Yao Yaoi said. If an ordinary alchemist heard about absorbing the essence of Wu Zun from the Dragon Clan, they would definitely believe it to be true and treat it as a treasure. However, those who could participate in the Lingxiao Pavilion's medicine fair were all young alchemists with powerful backgrounds and shocking inheritances. They might not be able to refine any pill formula, but at least they could. To be able to identify any medicinal herb and know its characteristics was something that they could do. Although the Dragon Bone 9-star leaf was an unorthodox herb, they knew it very well. This thing had a nice name and a good origin, but in fact, it was useless. The Dragon Bone 9-star leaf was originally a rare variant of the 9-star leaf. The 9-star leaf itself didn't have much value. It only had an empty nature and could withstand all kinds of forces. It was often used as a buffer when refining pills went wrong. However, the Dragon Bone 9-star leaf didn't have any of the original properties of the 9-star leaf. This was because the Dragon Bone 9-star leaf was a 9-star leaf that filled all the emptiness with the essence of the dragon power. It was full of violent dragon power. If an ordinary person consumed it, they would be instantly torn to pieces by the enormous dragon power inside. Even if one refined it with spirit fire, one wouldn't be able to refine it without the strength of a lesser saint or a few months. If one didn't handle it well, the dragon power would disperse halfway through the refinement and become the 9-star leaf that could only be used as a buffer. They said that there was almost no pill formula that could be refined. In fact, they were giving the skinny young man some face. In fact, there was no pill formula that could be refined into the Dragon Bone 9-star leaf at all. I see. There were also some talented young alchemists who did not know the origin of the Dragonbone 9-star leaf and were about to make a move. Someone at the side explained, and that person came to a sudden realization. He looked at the skinny young man with disdain. How could he take out something like the Dragonbone 9-star leaf? Was it because he couldn't deceive anyone? You might not be able to deceive them outside, but everyone here is a young genius alchemist. How could they be deceived by you? Suddenly, no one dared to approach the skinny youth. In fact, he even distanced himself from her. Seeing this, the skinny young man was completely stunned. He was just an ordinary alchemist who was lucky enough to obtain some opportunities and become a grade 7 alchemist before the age of 500, thus qualifying him to participate in the High Heaven Pavilion's medicine fair. Xiao Chun had taken a great risk to snatch this Dragonbone 9-star leaf from the dragon race's martial Saint Remnant. Outside, no one knew how to refine it, so the skinny youth could only assume that they didn't understand. Thinking about it, High Heaven Pavilion's medicine fair, where geniuses gathered, there should be some who knew its value. Unexpectedly, they knew the origin of the Dragonbone 9-star leaf and its value. It was worthless. The skinny young man didn't meet anyone knowledgeable. Instead, he was ridiculed to the extreme. The skinny young man opened his mouth. At this moment, Yao Yaoi spoke again, his face full of disdain. What about me? I didn't expect you to be able to enter the High Heaven Pavilion's medicine fair. You must have some talent and strength. I didn't expect you to be a scammer with such talent and strength. The world is really full of strange things. If even a scammer can have such talent, what are we alchemists doing? Yao Yaohui's sarcastic words immediately caused everyone to burst into laughter. In their opinion, the skinny young man who took out the Dragonbone 9-star leaf was like a clown. Hearing this, the skinny young man's face quickly flushed red. He could apologize for taking out the Dragonbone 9-star leaf, but he couldn't accept such humiliation from Yao Yaoi. His alchemy Dao cultivation was cultivated step by himself. He, too, was a dignified alchemist. Is such a person worthy of entering the High Heaven Pavilion's medicine fair? Due to the huge loss he suffered in Shao and restaurant yesterday, Yao Yaoi was still burning with anger. Now that the skinny young man came knocking on his door, he naturally began to mock him mercilessly. You! The skinny young man's entire face flushed red, and the power of primordial spirit in his body surged continuously. Don't tell me you want to fight? I'm so scared. Yao Yaoi laughed strangely. At this moment, the skinny young man couldn't take it anymore. A grade 7 pill, yin-yang conversion pill. A clear and calm voice suddenly sounded. It was as if a cool and clean wind had suddenly blown in after dozens of people had breathed in the turbid air for a day. It was so conspicuous, but it wasn't surprising. Hearing this, the skinny young man who was about to explode with anger was stunned and looked at the person who spoke. What did you say? Did I not make myself clear? A grade 7 yin-yang conversion pill in exchange for your Dragonbone 9-star leaf. Tianyang said with a smile. Hearing this, the skinny young man was completely stunned. If you don't know what the yin-yang conversion pill is, I can exchange it for a grade 7 pill. I won't shortchange you. Tianyang added. Hearing this, the skinny young man reacted instantly and nodded heavily. I know. Sure. He instantly forgot about Yao Yaoi and the others. Yin-yang conversion pill. This kind of renowned medicinal pill. How could he possibly not know? Reconstruct yin and yang. Circulate primordial spirit, and reconstruct meridians. It was as if he had broken and then rebuilt, but there was no great risk. A single pill could transform one's talent into a spirit. The skinny young man's talent wasn't good, and he had been stuck at Wu Zun Realm's 2nd level for hundreds of years. If nothing unexpected happened, he wouldn't be able to break through until he died. His alchemy cultivation naturally couldn't be improved. However, a single yin-yang conversion pill could change all of this. Perhaps the yin-yang conversion pill wasn't the most valuable grade 7 pill. However, it was definitely what the skinny young man needed the most. However, the yin-yang origin restoration pellet is simply too precious. The skinny young man was about to exchange, but he hesitated. I still have 2 Dragonbone 9-star leaves. There are 3 in total. Can I exchange one for yours? Sure. Tianyong smiled faintly. Then he flicked his finger. A perfectly round pill flew to the skinny young man. The skinny young man caught it in a fluster. After identifying it, he jumped up in joy. Then, he didn't hesitate anymore. He took 2 steps and directly handed the 3 Dragonbone 9-star leaves to Tianyong respectfully. Thank you so much. Chapter 1039. Yin-Yang Origin Elixir. As soon as these words came out, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. Even Yao Yaohui's mockery and ridicule were ignored. Everyone held their breaths when they saw Tianyong toss out the round elixir so casually. That was the Yin-Yang Origin Elixir. It was an elixir that could rebuild one's foundation and turn a good-for-nothing into a genius. Just like that, he threw it to a guy who had no background and whose name he didn't even know, just for 3 useless Dragonbone 9-star leaves. Isn't it just charity? Why didn't he give it to me? Some commoner alchemists wailed. As commoners, most of them did not have the talent of the aristocratic families. Some of them were even born with ordinary meridians. If not for their strong willpower, they would not have been able to enter the Lingxiao Pavilion. In their hearts, they also yearned for a yin-yang conversion pill to change their fates. However, they did not have one. Even if they did, it would not be theirs. The quality is not bad. Looks like this Wu Zun from the Dragon Clan is not an ordinary item. Tianyong looked at the 3 Dragonbone 9-star leaves in his hand with a satisfied expression. His ancestral dragon body had already reached greater mastery. He had just found a way to advance and needed resources to advance. Giving him the Dragonbone 9-star leaves was like giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. It was perfect. With these 3 leaves and the Vientiane Sky ruins, I should have enough treasures from Saint Songqing's cave abode. Tianyong smiled and made up his mind. In this world, the most important thing was one's strength. In the world of martial arts, strength was the truth. Alchemists, blacksmiths, and spiritual array masters were of noble status. However, in the face of a life-and-death crisis, the most important thing was still martial arts. Tianyong felt a sense of urgency. The Great Lord of Heaven was not only because of Shun Tian Wuzun's hatred, but also because of the Tianshao Great World's grudge. Tianyong had accepted the wish of all Heaven's sword, so he would definitely have a battle with the Great Lord of Heaven. Moreover, during the demon calamity, if the Great Lord of Heaven had not helped the Demon Emperor advance, the battle would have been difficult. Otherwise, that battle wouldn't have been so difficult, and Sky Continent wouldn't have almost fallen into a crisis of destruction. With the addition of new and old grudges, Tianyong was determined to kill Demon Venerable Hua Tian. However, when the Great Lord of Heaven fought with Shun Tian Wuzun, he was already a peak Demon Venerate. Now that such a long time had passed, how strong had Demon Venerable Hua Tian become? Half-saint? Saint? Tianyong could not be sure, but Tianyong's Wuzun's cultivation was at level 3 and his combat strength was at level 5. Forget about fighting the Great Lord of Heaven. Even a level 6 Wuzun could force him into a corner. The stronger, the better, and the faster, the better. Thank you so much. After confirming that the Yin-Yang Origin conversion pill in his hand was the real deal, the skinny young man's face flushed red again. However, this time it was not because of anger. It was because of excitement. With this Yin-Yang Origin conversion pill, the skinny young man's lifespan would be extended even if he could not become a half-saint. At that time, he would be able to go further on the path of alchemy. You give me the herbs, and I give you the pills. That's all. Tianyong smiled, walked to the side, and sat quietly. Next to him, Jean Daoping looked puzzled, but he did not say anything. Tianyong's level was much higher than his. Perhaps Tianyong wanted this Dragonbone 9-star leaf for some purpose? However, Yao Yaohui did not have such considerations. Deal? You're clearly throwing your money around. If a treasure like the Yin-Yang Origin conversion pill is auctioned, you can forget about getting it without 40 to 50 million Reiki. Now, you're exchanging it for 3 useless Dragonbone 9-star leaves? Pity the force behind you. The myriad pill ceremony hasn't even started, and you've already lost a yin-yang origin conversion pill. Yao Yaoi did not hold back as he mocked. Tianyang raised an eyebrow, and a trace of amusement appeared on his face. Is it your turn, or what did you take your things? Why are you so talkative? Tianyang smiled faintly. A loser should have the self-awareness of a loser. Don't run around like a clown wherever you go. It's not funny at all. After hearing this, the mocking expression on Yao Yaohui's face froze. On the other side, Yi Yuan, who had been silent all this while, also darkened his expression. Outside, Yao Yaoi and Yi Yuan were the face of the medicine god sect. Now, Yao Yaoi was being humiliated. It was as if the medicine god sect was being humiliated, and he was being humiliated. Just you wait. Yi Yuan glanced coldly at Tianyang, then looked away. The coldness in his eyes grew thicker. On the other side, a few commoner alchemists also looked jealous. How can this guy be so lucky? He actually managed to obtain a yin-yang origin conversion pill with just 3 useless medicinal herbs. He's lucky. That guy's a good person either. He has such a treasure, but he doesn't know how to share it. No wonder he was called out by the medicine god sect's eldest senior brother Yi Yuan. That's right. What use does a genius like him have for a yin-yang origin conversion pill? If it's charity, why not give it to us? The way I see it, there's clearly a shady deal between them. A few people whispered, looking at Tianyang and the skinny young man with anger and jealousy from time to time. At this moment, the skinny young man was still immersed in ecstasy, unable to extricate himself. He didn't notice the hostile gazes from others at all. Tianyang noticed, but he didn't care. This group of people was miserable. Of course they were miserable. They had encountered countless life and death crises along the way to achieve what they had today. The skinny young man might be miserable, but he definitely wasn't the most miserable. However, what did this have to do with Tianyang? They didn't have a Dragonbone 9-star leaf, so why would Tianyang help them? Was he retarded? All right, if you want to trade medicinal herbs or other treasures of heaven and earth, please step to the side. At this moment, Yi Yuan spoke, his cold voice carrying an unquestionable command. Hearing this, everyone automatically lowered their voices and silently listened to Yi Yuan speak. Next up is the most important scene of the Lingshao Pavilion's medicine gathering, a competition of alchemy. Our medicine gathering has always been a warm-up for the myriad pill ceremony. We are all the future alchemy leaders of the Xiantian Great World. Naturally, we can't lose to the enemy in alchemy. Yi Yuan's words made some people puzzled. What's wrong with Yi Yuan today? Why is he so talkative? On the other hand, Chunlin, who is also one of the 3 rising stars, looked at Tianyang with pity. This guy has offended Yi Yuan. He's dead meat. No matter what, we must have the courage to face an alchemy competition. Don't you think so? Master Yang of the Eastern Xian State's Dan Sinaville Sacred Tower. Yi Yuan turned his head and looked at Tianyang. This is Chapter 1040, a declaration of war. Yi Yuan's gaze was cold, and there was a trace of disdain in his eyes. It was as if, in his eyes, Tianyang was nothing more than a clown. However, this clown had slapped his junior brother in the face. Furthermore, he'd bought the Dragonbone 9-star leaf with the yin-yang origin conversion pill when everyone in the Firmament Pavilion's medicine banquet had rejected it. Strictly speaking, this was just a slap in the face. However, in Yi Yuan's eyes, this was a slap in the face. I don't think the great Grandmaster Yang will refuse, Yi Yuan said indifferently. Even though it was a provocation, his face was cold. This was his nature. However, to Tianyang, this nature was just asking for a beating. Why would I refuse the challenge of an ant? The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled into a faint smile. Hearing this, the already silent high heaven pavilion became even more deathly silent. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. They didn't hear wrong. This guy had offered a yin-yang conversion pill to exchange for 3 Dragonbone 9-star leaves, which were of little value, and had even been called out by Yi Yuan for a declaration of war. Yi Yuan, the first senior brother of the medicine god sect, whom they could only look up to, was reduced to an ant. "So it's already like this. Is there any use in arguing?" Seeing this, Chunlin, who was also one of the three rising stars, shook his head with a look of pity. Tianyang must be from a powerful family to be able to take out a treasure like the yin-yang conversion pill. However, no matter how powerful they were, how could they compare to Yi Yuan, the first senior brother of the medicine god sect? From the beginning, Tianyang was destined to lose. And now, Tianyang still didn't know what was good for him and was still mocking Yi Yuan. You can forgive the sins of heaven, but you can't live with the sins you bring upon yourself. Yao Yaohui's face was full of mockery. This guy is asking for it. All right. At this time, Yi Yuan finally replied. The frost on his face seemed to have come from the northern wilderness. The surrounding temperature dropped by dozens of degrees because of this cold shout. In the high heaven pavilion, the decorative vases were covered with ice crystals, and the flowers at this moment froze and turned into ice cubes. It was obvious that Yi Yuan was infuriated. How dare an ant speak to him like this? Divine alchemy cauldron. Rise, Yi Yuan roared, and in the next moment, his true essence was released. Streaks of spatial energy burst out from Yi Yuan's body. Light gathered in his hand, and in the next moment, it turned into a solid pill cauldron, appearing in front of everyone. The surface of the cauldron was engraved with all sorts of mysterious patterns. As soon as the cauldron appeared, it seemed as if the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth began to swirl. It revolved around the pill cauldron. It's a pill cauldron that only the medicine god sect master can use. I never expected that the divine alchemy cauldron would be given to Yi Yuan. Although Yi Yuan was born into poverty, he was raised by the medicine god sect from a young age. His loyalty can be seen by the heavens and earth. Furthermore, Yi Yuan's talent is the strongest in the history of the medicine god sect. He's only 300 years old, and he's already a grade 7 advanced alchemist. He even has the strength to break through to grade 7 pinnacle or even minor saint. If I don't give him the divine alchemy cauldron, should I give it to Yao Yaohui? Some people exclaimed, while others chuckled and explained. However, Yao Yaohui, who was being used as an example, had a sullen expression on his face. His talent wasn't considered bad in the entire great mystic cosmos. However, compared to Yi Yuan, who was from the same sect as him, it was like comparing a star to the moon. He could only serve as a foil. No matter what, this Grandmaster Yang is definitely worse than me. Yao Yaohui gritted his teeth. He couldn't refute them, so he could only use the Tianyang as an example. This is your pill cauldron? Tianyang raised an eyebrow at the sight of the pill cauldron. Why did it feel like the divine alchemy cauldron was inferior to his netherworld fire cauldron? That made sense. The netherworld fire cauldron had appeared together with a myriad pill tome in the tomb of the Sky Hegemon Blade Emperor. Perhaps the netherworld fire cauldron itself had belonged to Banten Semyon. Wouldn't it be normal for something belonging to Banten Semyon to destroy the medicine god sect's pill cauldron? Of course, the netherworld fire cauldron was now his. Come out. Tianyang waved his hand casually. Flames gathered and flickered alternately with silver and black light. In the next moment, a majestic aura appeared in the Lingxiao pavilion. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth swirling around the divine alchemy cauldron suddenly stopped when the black light appeared. Then, like a swarm of bees, it rushed toward Tianyang. Instantly, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around Yi Yuan grew thinner and thinner, while that around Tianyang grew stronger and stronger. The surrounding alchemists couldn't sense any of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It was as if Tianyang was the ruler of this part of the world. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth without intelligence revolved around him. It can't be. At this moment, Tianyang was stunned. He felt it. When he summoned the netherworld fire cauldron, the myriad pill tome hidden in the depths of the cauldron suddenly bloomed with Xingguang. Then it merged into the netherworld fire cauldron. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings also began to riot the moment it began to merge with the cauldron. Damn it! Yi Yuan, on the other hand, didn't care at all. His cold eyes seemed to spit out flames. This is too much. We're both summoning cauldrons. Why can you steal my spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Wait a minute. If that's the case, won't our spiritual energy be stolen next? At this moment, a shocked expression appeared on someone's face. Hurry up and summon your cauldrons. Otherwise, there won't be any spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the competition later. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was not only useful for cultivators. It was the same for elixirs. Refining elixirs in the sacred mountain, where spiritual energy of heaven and earth was abundant, and in a barren land outside the domain, even if it was the same person and the same herbs, the effects would be completely different. This was also the reason why they chose to hold the medicine conference in the Lingxiao Pavilion. If all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was stolen by Tianyang alone, then what was the point of playing? Dragon Phoenix Cauldron, rise. Black Tortoise Fire Cauldron, out. Dual Flame Cauldron, out. One by one, the alchemists began to circulate their inner yuan and release their cauldrons. At this moment, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was also affected by the impact of countless cauldrons. At this moment, it quieted down a little. If one or two cauldrons were snatched, it would cause chaos in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, if there were dozens of cauldrons together, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would instead calm down. As expected, no matter how strong that kid is, he can't steal our spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Seeing this, Yao Yaohui immediately revealed a mocking expression. Yi Yuan also heaved a sigh of relief. Boom! At this moment, the light in front of Tianyang suddenly exploded with a loud bang. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth that had just calmed down began to riot again. It was even more ferocious than before, surging wildly toward Tianyang. The surrounding cauldrons also began to tremble continuously. Even the divine alchemy cauldron was no exception. It tilted slightly toward Tianyang's direction. It was as if, as a subject, they were worshipping their king. Light shone brightly. The shimmering fire cauldron appeared. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings was also snatched by the Xianming fire cauldron. Chapter 1041. Universe-suppressing cauldron. Seeing the Xianming fire cauldron being worshipped by thousands of cauldrons, some people were expressionless, while others were so angry that their faces turned white. Why is your cauldron the only one so strong? Not only did you steal the world's spiritual energy, you even made our cauldrons worship you. The typical representative of these people was naturally Yao Yaohui. Damn it! Yao Yaohui clenched his teeth and looked at the slightly tilted cauldron in front of him, resisting the urge to smash it. His cauldron was also a gift from the medicine god sect. Although it was far inferior to the divine alchemy cauldron, it was still one of the best cauldrons present. However, in front of the Xianming fire cauldron, it could only be a joke. Even the divine alchemy cauldron had knelt, so what could his little cauldron do? You're just relying on the power of your cauldron. What kind of skill is that? At this time, a voice different from Yao Yaohui's sounded. Yao Yaohui was overjoyed and looked at the kindred spirit. However, at a glance, his clothes were ordinary and could be considered shabby compared to their golden silk and jade garments. His aura wasn't too strong either. It could be said that he was trash. This person happened to be the commoner disciple that Yao Yaohui had always looked down on. TSK. Yao Yaohui sneered and turned his head away, ignoring him. What a big commotion. At this time, Tianyang looked around. The world's spiritual energy was like a ball, enveloping him in the Xianming fire cauldron. Although the spirit-gathering array of Sky Tower was still doing its best to gather the world's spiritual energy, it was snatched away by the Xianming fire cauldron. Moreover, it wasn't just a simple snatch. The Xianming fire cauldron was still madly swallowing. To be precise, the myriad pill tome that had merged with the Xianming fire cauldron was madly swallowing the enormous amount of spiritual energy. How do you expect us to refine pills like this? At this time, Yi Yuan finally spoke, his expression extremely ugly. Even with his personality, he couldn't hold back at this moment. After all, the most important thing in refining pills, apart from the ingredients, pill recipe, cauldron, and one's alchemy cultivation was the environment. And this environment was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Now that all of High Heaven Pavilion's world energy had been snatched away by the profound underworld flame cauldron, the place they were in, although it couldn't be said that there was nothing left, it was no different from a desperate situation. How could they refine pills like this? Once he started concocting pills, he would be done for. Yes, aren't you just relying on your pill cauldron? He's just robbed us of our heaven and earth spiritual energy. When the time comes, even if you beat senior brother Yi Yuan, we won't acknowledge you. At this moment, Yao Yaoi spoke again with a face full of disdain. In their opinion, Tianyang was just a waste who couldn't do anything. How could he be like them and enter High Heaven Pavilion? Those commoners were just lucky. They didn't end up like Dan Sinaville. Who knew how many more people had their spots snatched away and were not using them? This medicine fair had been like this for countless years. Alchemists from large forces, instead of studying alchemy, spent all day thinking about how to persecute commoners. For example, Dan Sinaville wasn't considered a commoner, but for the alchemy forces of the Eastern Sky Divine Land, it was about the same. They used some methods to snatch the spots away. Then it was empty. They just snatched it away and didn't let them step into the medicine fair. That was all. They didn't need the spots at all. There were many things that happened to Dan Sinaville. However, not every small force and commoner disciple had Tianyang. Oh, hearing this, Tianyang only spat out a word indifferently. Who do you think you are? Now that the myriad pill tome is absorbing the heaven and earth spiritual energy, I've snatched it away. You don't even have a decent pill cauldron, and you still have a nerve to step into this place? Tianyang said indifferently. Hearing this, Yao Yaoi, who was about to speak, instantly shut his mouth. There was no other way. Tianyang's shimming fire cauldron was too strong. Even the divine alchemy cauldron couldn't withstand the pressure of the shimming fire cauldron. If he wanted to talk back, he didn't know how to. However, the myriad pill tome was only an incomplete part of the myriad pill sacred tome after all. It couldn't absorb too much heaven and earth spiritual energy. In less than 3 minutes, words appeared on the myriad pill tome. The myriad pill tome also stopped absorbing heaven and earth spiritual energy. The heaven and earth spiritual energy that had gathered around Tianyang automatically dispersed. In the Lingxiao Pavilion, only Tianyang had heaven and earth spiritual energy around him. The strange situation where the rest of the pavilion was barren also disappeared. However, just as Yao Yaoi was about to mock him, he discovered that the heaven and earth spiritual energy hovering around Tianyang was still the most abundant in the entire venue. All right. Yi Yuan's expression returned to its original indifference, but the coldness between his brows had become even more terrifying. From the beginning, Yi Yuan, the eldest senior brother of the Divine Alchemy sect, and one of the 3 rising stars of the Myriad Pill ceremony, had lost by more than 1 level. His junior brother had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Tianyang. The Dragonbone 9-star Li from before had also been humiliated by Tianyang. Just now, when they had summoned their pill cauldrons together, the divine alchemy cauldron that he thought was the strongest had been crushed by Tianyang's pill cauldron. If you want to compete, choose another time. Now, Grandmaster Yang, please. Yi Yuan said coldly, then opened his space bag. Countless medicinal herbs appeared around Yi Yuan like stars in the sky. Each of them was suspended in midair. The distance between each medicinal herb was actually exactly the same. The largest error was no more than 0.1 centimeters. So strong. As expected of the eldest senior brother of the Divine Alchemy sect, the successor of the Divine Alchemy Cauldron, and one of the 3 rising stars of the Myriad Pill ceremony. The different types of medicinal herbs contain huge differences in the energy they contain. It's extremely difficult to control so many medicinal herbs at the same time. Moreover, he has to control the distance between all the medicinal herbs so well. Someone cried out in surprise. Yi Yuan's move was done without a sound. However, the formidable strength of his origin spirit and his ability to control his origin spirit shocked everyone. He could become the eldest senior brother of the Divine Alchemy sect, one of the three rising stars alongside Qianluan and little Princess Tang, not just by relying on his mouth. Fire come! Yi Yuan snorted coldly, and a dazzling ball of icy blue flames appeared under the divine alchemy cauldron. The surrounding air, which was already cold, dropped by a lot. Level 7 spiritual fire, sky frost, ice flame. That's Yi Yuan's strongest spiritual fire. I didn't expect him to take it out this time. This Yang has thoroughly angered Yi Yuan. So what if the pill cauldron is strong? So what if he's rich? In the face of true strength, he can only lose. Someone sneered. Qianluan, who had been silent all this time, saw this and shook his head. He really couldn't see how Tianyang could win. Too reckless. Qianluan thought to himself. Tianyang, on the other hand, didn't care at all. Instead, he touched the netherworld fire cauldron. Information automatically transmitted to his mind. Chapter 1042. A huge amount of complicated information flowed into Tianyang's mind like a torrential flood. Fortunately, Tianyang's primordial spirit power was different from ordinary people. Otherwise, with such a huge torrent of information rushing into his mind, those with weak primordial spirit power would have been directly blasted into a fool. However, even so, Tianyang was caught off guard and was somewhat strenuous. But then, Tianyang suddenly realized that the torrent of information that poured into his mind was different from the pill formulas that he found in the myriad pill scripture. The 7th grade sky break pill? It wasn't there before. When did it appear? Why does this heavenly spirit treasure profound pill have a lot of detailed procedures? Wait, if I refine it like this, it's even stronger. Tianyang's pupils shrank slightly. At this moment, he finally realized why the myriad pill scripture had absorbed such a huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy. The myriad pill scripture was an incomplete part of the myriad pill scripture. Among them, there was only a small portion of the 10,000 pill sacred canon's pill recipes. As for the rest, they were all incomplete, including the few minor saint-level pills. And now, not only was there a lot of pill formulas that Tianyang had never seen before, but the minor saint-level pill formulas were also much more complete. If Tianyang carefully deduced for a period of time, he might be able to completely deduce all of the minor saint-level pill formulas. Could it be because this place is Danseinaville? Tianyang raised his eyebrows as endless doubts arose in his heart. However, now was not the time to pursue these matters. However, the appearance of the shimmering fire cauldron has helped me a lot. I haven't refined it before. Tianyang smiled slightly and came back to his senses. At this moment, Yao Yaohui's mocking voice was heard. Ha ha ha. This guy actually froze before he even summoned his flame. Could it be that he was dumbfounded by senior brother Yi Yuan's pill refining? That's true. Senior brother Yi Yuan's strength, even in Banten Semian, there are very few people who can compare with him. How can a kid from outside the Eastern Sky Divine region compare with us? Now, I'm afraid he's planning how to escape, Yao Yaoi said disdainfully. As soon as he summoned the pill cauldron, he froze in place, although it was only for 1 or 2 minutes. However, in this 1 or 2 minutes, Yi Yuan had already finished heating the cauldron and had already begun to control the fire to refine the pills. In Yi Yuan's hands, the medicinal herbs were like the most docile little kittens. He allowed the heavenly ice flame to ignite it and extract its essence, waiting for it to condense into a core. On the other hand, Tianyang remained motionless. Even little Princess Tang was puzzled. What was going on? Tianyang's strength was not so bad that he would be killed in an instant before he even made a move. Jin Daoping, on the other hand, had a grave expression on his face. In alchemy, one's aura was extremely important. Tianyang was dumbfounded as he watched Yi Yuan concoct pills. Yi Yuan's aura was gone forever. At that time, how could he compete with Yi Yuan? True flames of destruction. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly moved. Within the shimmering fire cauldron, rays of light suddenly blossomed. Without the need for external flames to burn, it automatically rose to the most suitable temperature. In less than 3 seconds, he had caught up with Yi Yuan's 1-minute effort. Tisk, he's only starting now. Unless he's refining those simple pills that are sure to fail, there's no way he can compete with eldest senior brother Yi Yuan. Seeing this, Yao Yaoi sneered and said disdainfully. However, Tianyang did not care. His 10 fingers moved rhythmically, and pure black true flames of destruction were thrown into the Xianming fire cauldron. The true flames of destruction had not devoured spiritual fire for a long time. It was only a peak 6th grade spiritual fire now. Compared to Yi Yuan's heavenly ice flame, it was much weaker. However, although flames were important in refining pills, flames were not the most important thing. Songlong's overlord pill. Tianyang's lips curled into a faint smile. In the next moment, he opened his hands. Hundreds of medicinal herbs appeared in front of Tianyang. Songlong's overlord pill, a 7th grade pinnacle pill. With the Dragonbone 9-star leaf as the core, it gathered the power of thousands of true dragons. It could be said that it was much more powerful than the dark lightning fire pill Tianyang had in the sacred tower in Dansinaville. Tianyang had already consumed the dark lightning fire pill in Skygale Valley and cultivated the ancestral dragon physique to the peak. Now, Tianyang wanted to rely on the Songlong's overlord pill to break through the shackles of the ancestral dragon physique. He would achieve the 7th refinement of the 9 refinements dragon physique, the Dragon King physique. Dragonbone 9-star leaf? So many medicinal herbs? Seeing the most dazzling Dragonbone 9-star leaf in the center, everyone was stunned. They thought that Tianyang had bought 3 Dragonbone 9-star leaves just to show off. However, it was now the crucial moment of the pill battle. He actually took out the Dragonbone 9-star leaf. Can the Dragonbone 9-star leaf be used to refine pills? Someone had a look of disbelief. Could the Dragonbone 9-star leaf really be used to refine pills? It almost overturned their understanding. Such a violent and horrifying energy. Was it really something that a medicinal pill could control? Impossible. This guy must be putting on an act. At this moment, Yao Yaohui's face also darkened. He denied it. The Dragonbone 9-star leaf is publicly known as a useless medicinal herb. How can it be used to refine pills? Such violent medicinal effects. Did he commit suicide by taking it? This is the conclusion of the ancestors of the medicine god sect. How can a mere pill refiner defeat it? Does he think that he can affect eldest senior brother Yi Yuan's state of mind by taking out a strange medicinal herb like the Dragonbone 9-star leaf? This kid is too naive. Yao Yaoi sneered, thinking that he had found the answer. However, Tianyang only smiled faintly when he heard that. Then the ancestors of the medicine god sect are really bad. Then, the true flames of destruction suddenly bloomed with an incomparably dazzling light. It soared into the sky. It turned into 9 peerless fire dragons, dazzling the world. 9 dragons wheel. Countless medicinal herbs also seemed to have found a resonance at this moment and rushed toward the 9 dragons' wheel. The first to bear the brunt was a medicinal herb that looked like a lingji. Blood dragon lingji? It's also a medicinal herb with such violent medicinal effects? What exactly is this guy refining? True dragon leaf, tyrant tiger flower, heavenly dragaheart fruit, these are all medicinal herbs that ordinary cultivators wouldn't dare to eat. At this moment, everyone was stunned. They still somewhat believed in Yao Yaohui's conclusion before, but now they were shaken, more than a little. Although these medicinal herbs were all different, and even their natures were completely opposite. However, all of them had a vague center that surrounded and matched each other. In that instant, everyone's gazes, which had been focused on Yi Yuan, shifted to Tianyang. At this moment, the corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly. Burn! In the next moment, the 9 fire dragons opened their terrifying mouths. Streams of true flames of destruction spewed out, igniting hundreds of medicinal herbs at the same time. In the Lingxiao Pavilion. As if. Chapter 1043. Hundreds of herbs were ignited at the same time. Gold, silver, purple, white, black. Countless bright and beautiful colors were released in the air at this moment. The surrounding heaven and earth spiritual chi was like a bucket of stagnant water or a storm of pebbles thrown into it. It started to surge crazily. This guy's crazy. Chun Luan's pupils constricted as he growled in disbelief. These hundreds of herbs were incomparably precious in the outside world, divine items that could only be found by chance. Even for him, one of the 3 rising stars, it was extremely difficult to get one of them. In the end, this guy ignited all of them with a single fire. Crazy. Completely crazy. Even Yao Yaohui did not have time to mock him at this moment. He could only look at the hundreds of blooming fireworks in disbelief. His heart was bleeding. You burned all these herbs with a single fire? If you don't want them, I want them. At this moment, Yi Yuan could no longer maintain his cold demeanor. His pupils were dilated to the extreme as he looked at the hundreds of flames in disbelief. Was this guy crazy? He summoned the cauldron, snatched everyone's heaven and earth spiritual chi, and started the alchemy battle. He was stunned for another 2 minutes. Now he had started the alchemy. He had just gotten on the right track when he ignited all the herbs with a single fire. He would not believe that this person was not crazy. As for Jean Daoping and little Princess Tang, they were in a daze. At this moment, Tianyang chuckled and waved his hands. Hundreds of flames shot into the cauldron like the most dazzling shooting stars in the night sky. Song Long's overlord pill was incomparably domineering. Among them, the Dragonbone 9-star leaf was publicly recognized as a useless herb in the alchemy world. Perhaps only those demonic beasts with incomparably ferocious physical bodies or body refiners could consume it. However, after consuming it, they would feel like dying, and the effect was not very good. That was why it was publicly recognized as a useless herb. However, who was it that actually researched a divine pill, like Song Long's overlord pill? Your Dragonbone 9-star leaf is very domineering? Then, I'll use a few hundred herbs that are as domineering as yours to curb violence with violence. I'll beat you until you kneel down and call me daddy. Curb violence with violence. This was the name that Tianyang had just given to the refining method of Song Long's overlord pill. It couldn't be more appropriate. That's not right. At this moment, Chun Luan's pupils suddenly shrank. This guy isn't crazy. He's using the power of countless medicinal herbs to suppress and refine the Dragonbone 9-stars leaf. Furthermore, through this suppressive power, I can expel the impurities while condensing the core. Chun Luan's heart was filled with great astonishment. It was too crazy, too terrifying. Even an alchemy madman like him felt a chill run down his spine when he saw it. The slightest bit of carelessness would result in the explosion of the cauldron, the explosion of the pill, and death. However, he was too strong. Chun Luan's eyes were filled with excitement. He didn't know how to concoct pills like this, and he probably wouldn't be able to learn it in this lifetime. However, this did not hinder him. He was intoxicated by it. Break! At this moment, Tianyang shouted. The fire dragons let out ferocious roars. The Dragonbone 9-star leaf, which was bathed in flames, also let out its final roar. The Dragonbone 9-star leaf was no longer the only one resisting. Instead, it was the dragon power essence within the Dragonbone 9-star leaf that was resisting, roaring, and defending its dignity. The dragon Wuzun that had fused with the 9-star leaf was probably no ordinary Wuzun. Instead, he was a peak Wuzun who was close to becoming a half-saint. It's a pity that the main body of the Dragonbone 9-star leaf is of poor quality. Not much of the peak dragon sovereign strength is preserved. Otherwise, if he could concoct the Song Long sky dominating pellet, it would be possible for me to reach the peak of the Dragon King physique. Tianyang shook his head and sighed as he sensed the frenzied roar of the Dragonbone 9-star leaf within the 9 Dragons Will technique. However, he was only saying it verbally. If all of Longzuan's power had been preserved. If that was the case, the Dragonbone 9-star leaf would have smacked him to death with a single leaf. How could he possibly have a chance to refine pills here? However, the current Dragonbone 9-star leaf is also a supreme-grade treasure. Exchanging the yin-yang origin elixir for 3 stalks is not a loss at all. Tianyang licked his dry lips. His eyes were filled with madness. Similarly, the surrounding alchemists were also in a frenzy. Apart from idiots like Yao Yaohui, There were actually many alchemists who were here to pursue the true Tao of alchemy. For example, Jean Daoping, Chenlin, Little Princess Tang, and the Skinny Youth. At this moment, they were completely immersed in Tianyang's alchemy. Every time the flames went berserk, their hearts would be stirred. Every time the essence of medicinal herbs was cleanly extracted, they could not help but cheer loudly. Refining pills was dry and unbearable. It could easily take days or even months to refine pills. Apart from alchemists, very few people could immerse themselves in it. However, Tianyang was refining pills now. Even the other cultivators in the Lingxiao Pavilion were attracted over. However, Yi Yuan, who had just won the limelight, was extremely sullen at this moment. The pill he was refining was also at the peak of grade 7. The heavenly ice flame was even more powerful than the true destruction flames. However, no one was looking at him at all. Even his own junior brother, Yao Yao Wei, could not help but look at Tianyang. This feeling of being betrayed by his own people caused Yi Yuan to be unable to restrain his rage. His hands, which were controlling the flames, began to tremble. Fortunately, Yi Yuan was at the peak of grade 7 after all. He was the eldest senior brother of the Medicine God sect. Otherwise, he would not have made any major mistakes. But now, the originally rapid progress of refining pills had also slowed down. That was because he could not help but watch Tianyang refine pills. Roar! The 9 fire dragons let out earth-shattering roars. Billowing black smoke was spat out of the dragons' mouths and then burned into nothingness by the flames. The impurities had been expelled. At this moment, the fire dragons' bodies contained the purest and most powerful medicinal herbs. There was nothing else. The dragonbone 9-star leaf, which had been going berserk, gradually calmed down under the continuous burning of the flames. Next is, seeing this, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. The flames in his hands danced like spirits. The Xianming fire cauldron suddenly released rays of light. Originally, Tianyang had never refined Songlong's Sky Tyrant pill before. Previously, he had only refined it with great force because of his innate talent in alchemy. Now, countless information from the myriad pill tome flooded into his mind. It made him feel as if he had refined Songlong's Sky Tyrant pill thousands of times. His following actions were as smooth as flowing water. It was incomparably effortless. Condense the pill. Tianyang yelled softly. The fire dragons roared at the sky. Boom! Boom! At this moment, in the sky above Lingxiao Pavilion, in the sky above Dansinaville, rolling thunderclouds entrenched the sky like ferocious beasts. No one present could see it, but they could all feel it. The terror of the heavenly tribulation. This, Chun Luan stammered. Chun Luan said in a trembling voice, his hands trembling. The tribulation has arrived before the pill is complete. This is Chapter 1044. Before the pill was formed, the tribulation had arrived. Rolling thunderclouds constantly swallowed and spat out lightning swords with infinite power, shooting out in all directions. It was as if the god of thunder had descended to the world, destroying heaven and earth. The violent and terrifying power of the heavenly tribulation enveloped the entire Lingxiao Pavilion, almost enveloping the entire Dansinaville. The rolling pressure became stronger and stronger as Songlong's overlord pill condensed. Tianyang only knew that Songlong's violent pill refining method was shocking and unprecedented. But he didn't know. Back then, the person who had created this method of using violence to refine pills was a terrifying saint who possessed unparalleled alchemy cultivation. Only a saint could use such a terrifying and heaven-defying pill refining method. He didn't follow the pill refining method set by the heavenly Tao at all. He followed his own way, following his heart's desire, opening up a new path. He had already stepped half a foot into the realm above the saint realm, and Tianyang didn't know. Even the complete version of the Myriad Pill's sacred canon wouldn't record this. No one would remind him. A pill refined in this way was strong, indeed. However, the heavenly tribulation it attracted would be even more terrifying. Oh no, I'm afraid I can't block this pill tribulation. At this moment, Chunlun suddenly woke up from his intoxication, revealing a trace of seriousness on his face. This pressure was too strong. It had far surpassed all the pill tribulations he had seen from peak 7th grade pills. A pill tribulation at the level of a peak 7th grade pill would be extremely difficult for an ordinary 7th grade martial honor to withstand. Moreover, Tianyang was only a 3rd grade Wuzun. Now, the pill tribulation attracted by Tsonglong's overlord pill was even stronger and more terrifying than the pill tribulation of an ordinary peak 7th grade pill. Tianyang, even if he refined a heaven-defying pill of this level, it was unknown whether he could block this heavenly tribulation. Humph! At this moment, a sliver of joy finally appeared on Yi Yuan's frosty face. Your pill refining method is incomparably powerful, and the pill you refined attracted the pill tribulation in advance. So what if it's called a divine pill? If he couldn't pass the pill tribulation, all of your medicinal ingredients will turn into ashes. All of your efforts will be destroyed by the lightning. On the other hand, even though Yi Yuan was mediocre and often made mistakes, he still managed to create a peak 7th rank Dan. As long as Tianyang made even the slightest mistake during the pill tribulation, even Yi Yuan had the confidence to defeat him. No matter where I go, the heavenly tribulation always targets me. Tianyang's gaze pierced through the heavy barriers of High Heaven Pavilion and looked up into the sky. The azure sky had already been dyed black by the dark clouds. At this moment, there were only patches of heavenly tribulation thunderclouds in the sky, which looked like a sea of clouds. The majestic heavenly might was so terrifying. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't even be able to look directly at it. However, if that's all, the corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly. The 9 fire dragons suddenly let out a loud roar that shook the heavens. The 9 dragons roared, and the wheel returned to 1. Songlong's sky tyrant pill and the countless medicinal ingredients were now fused into 1. Core condensation. Boom! At this moment, the thunderclouds in the sky also unleashed their fury. Like a huge dragon, the lightning descended fiercely, piercing through space and charging towards Tianyang. It was trying to shatter this Songlong's sky tyrant pill that didn't follow the heavenly Tao's method before the core condensation was completed. Insignificant tricks. Just as Qinluan was hesitating whether to make a move, Tianyang made his move. There was a hint of contempt in his eyes as he punched out with his right fist. 108 ancestral dragon tattoos on Tianyang's body released an incomparably bright xinguang. 1 ancestral dragon tattoo was the power of 108 mystical dragons. 108 ancestral dragon tattoo was the power of 11,664 mystical dragons. With 1 punch, heaven and earth were overturned, mountains and rivers were overturned, and the void was destroyed. Dragon Emperor's divine fist. Tianyang roared. Instantly, a powerful and terrifying Dragon Emperor's seal appeared in front of him. It collided fiercely with the lightning dragon. Boom! Lightning flashed, and the surroundings were overturned by the violent shockwaves. Even Yi Yuan's flames were unavoidably affected, and his furnace almost exploded. At this moment, the enraged heavenly tribulation pierced through space again. 1, 2, 3. 3 heavenly tribulations that were no weaker than the first appeared in front of Tianyang at the same time, fiercely charging towards Tianyang. Another 300 heavenly tribulations? That's it. Tianyang smiled and dodged. Both fists punched out at the same time, and the power shook the heavens. Boom, 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 boom. These 2 punches contained the power of countless punches. Countless dragon tattoo dragons roared ferociously. The alchemists present couldn't even see the speed of Tianyang's punches. It was as if Tianyang didn't move at all. They could only see Tianyang's attacks through the scattered lightning. Motionless, like a still pond in autumn. Shocking, like a dragon from the 9 heavens. Thunder surged, and heaven and earth shook. The terrifying heavenly tribulation had already turned into a huge lightning storm in Lingxiao Pavilion. If Yi Yuan hadn't reacted quickly and immediately used his true essence to set up a true essence shield, he wouldn't have been able to stop it. Otherwise, in these few minutes, he wouldn't have been able to control his furnace. He was completely unable to control his own pill cauldron, and in the end, the cauldron explosion failed. Too strong. At this moment, Yao Yaoi was completely speechless. Lowly background? Shallow knowledge? You don't even know about medicine god sex black phoenix wine? All of this was no longer a problem in front of the terrifying strength Tianyang had displayed. His alchemy skills that had never been heard of before had instantly shocked everyone in Lingxiao Pavilion. Now, the powerful strength that had erupted from resisting the pill tribulation had convinced everyone except Yi Yuan, skilled in both alchemy and martial arts. Although it was extremely hard to believe, this word had really appeared. It had appeared in front of a person from a force outside the Eastern Divine Land that they had always disdained. Finally, I'll send you off with a sword. Black demonic lightning condensed in front of Tianyang, releasing a heart-palpitating aura of destruction. In the next moment, Tianyang also waved his hand. Light jumped, and beside Tianyang, the great void sword embryo, shining with the brilliance of a semi-sage tool, suddenly appeared. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled into a smile. Suddenly, the black demonic lightning suddenly released rays of light. It violently charged towards Tianyang. At this moment, Tianyang's body also suddenly bloomed with terrifying power. This power seemed to come from above the 9 heavens, overlooking the world and looking down on the world. Everything in the world was like an ant in front of this power. The power of the Sage Realm's sword principle. One sword, flying immortal. Tianyang's lips opened slightly and spat out 4 words. The great void sword embryo released rays of sword light, bright and dazzling, unable to look directly at it. The black demonic lightning roared ferociously and shot towards Tianyang. Its speed was extremely fast. Similarly, the speed of one sword flying immortal was also extremely fast. Boom! A small sound rang out. The great void sword embryo had returned to Tianyang's hand. There was no trace of it, and that ferocious black demonic lightning was the final thunder of the heavenly tribulation. It was frozen in midair. The next second, Chapter 1045, 1/. The terrifying heavenly tribulation that seemed to want to destroy the world dissipated like smoke and dust between heaven and earth. Other than the blazing Tsang Long's dominating heaven pill, which proved the power of this lightning essence, there was no other trace. At this time, everyone was stunned. Previously, he was incomparably powerful, shattering the lightning and shaking the sky with his body. Now, the last bolt of black demon lightning that even Wu Zun had to pay attention to was actually broken with 1 slash. Alchemy and martial arts are both so powerful. Is this guy really from the Eastern profound state under the Eastern sky, divine continent? Chen Lun looked in disbelief at Tianyang, who had returned to the side of the Xianming fire cauldron and kept his sword. Wave after wave of shock surged in his heart. Never mind that his alchemy was so powerful, but his martial arts were also so powerful. Qianluan found it hard to imagine how such an existence could be born in this world. Could it be that he's Bantan Simyun or someone from another sage sect, ran to the Eastern profound state, and then came here to pretend to be a pig, to eat a tiger? Qianluan could not help but think. At this time, Tianyang also glanced at the Tsang Long's dominating heaven pill in the Xianming fire cauldron that was firmly sealed by the true flames of destruction and unable to escape. Compared to other pills, the Tsang Long's dominating heaven pill was obviously more violent. Although other pills had spirituality and wanted to escape, they would automatically give up after a few attacks. However, this Tsang Long's dominating heaven pill, ever since it successfully condensed the pill, it had been attacking the cauldron and had not stopped until now. There were even a few times that it almost broke through the seal of the true flames of destruction. Moreover, it was constantly releasing a violent and unruly aura, as if this cauldron was not a pill, but a peerless genius whose fate was in its own hands. The herbs used for the Tsang Long's dominating heaven pill were all terrifyingly domineering herbs. The refining process was almost crazy, using violence to curb violence. In addition to the terrifying heavenly tribulation at the end, the three of them combined into one. Although this Tsang Long Sky Tyrant pill was said to be at the peak of grade 7, in terms of medicinal energy, it was probably not too bad compared to some minor saint grade pills. The only thing missing was the Saint Path aura that could perfectly fuse with the pill. Not bad. Seeing this Tsang Long's Overlord pill, Tianyong immediately revealed an extremely satisfied smile. Not only did the quality of the Dragonbone 9-star leaf exceed his expectations, even its Tsang Long Sky Tyrant pellet was perfect. With this Tsang Long's dominating heaven pellet, Tianyong's chances of attaining the Dragon King's body had also increased. Eldest senior brother of the Medicine God sect, may I ask if you finished refining? Tianyong waved his hand and unceremoniously suppressed Tsang Long's Sky Tyrant pellet. He stored it in the Xianming fire cauldron and returned it to his body. At the same time, he looked at Yi Yuan, who was absorbing the spirit qi of heaven and earth and refining. Seeing this, some people couldn't help but click their tongues. Tianyong's provocation of Yi Yuan wasn't unexpected. However, that was a pill comparable to a divine pill. Wasn't he afraid that it would self-destruct by treating it so crudely? If these pill refiners were lucky enough to refine a divine pill that caused the pill tribulation to come early, they would probably have to treat it like an ancestor. Even if they wanted to consume it, they would have to think about it for 10 days to half a month before making up their minds to consume it. Otherwise, if the divine pill self-destructed, it would be over. On the other hand, Tianyong didn't care at all. If he wanted to refine it, so be it. If he wanted to escape, he would directly suppress it in the cauldron. They were ashamed of their inferiority to such boldness. However, I didn't know. Tsang Long's Sky Tyrant pellet was fundamentally different from other pills. As a pill that could cause one's body to self-destruct, Tsang Long's Sky Tyrant pellet's medicinal properties could be said to be extremely tyrannical. To deal with this kind of pill, one could only use violence to curb violence, just like refining pills. One had to use strength and pressure that was stronger than it to forcefully subdue it. At this moment, Yi Yuan was in no mood to care about how Tianyong would deal with Tsang Long's Sky Tyrant pellet. Cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. The hands that were controlling the heavenly ice flame suddenly began to tremble. The originally orderly steps of refining pills were also messed up at this moment. No, the temperature here is too low. The temperature here is too high. The impurities in the medicinal herbs have not been expelled. Not good. Yi Yuan's hands were trembling. He couldn't even control the heavenly ice flame that had accompanied him for decades. The entire cauldron was in a mess. Seeing this, Yi Yuan became even more flustered. However, no matter how flustered he was, he couldn't save this pill. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion sounded. Cracks suddenly appeared on the inner walls of the cauldron. A pillar of air also shot up to the sky. The cauldron didn't explode. However, the medicinal herbs had completely exploded. This cauldron of pills was ruined. Seeing this, Yi Yuan was about to go crazy. He had worked so hard to refine this pill for so long, but it was ruined. Moreover, if the divine alchemy cauldron wasn't strong enough, it wouldn't just be a ruined pill. It would be a cauldron explosion. What a bad attitude. Tianyong pursed his lips when he saw this. What kind of joke was this? The divine alchemy god? If the primordial divine alchemy god really recovered, he would probably kill this guy with a slap. Let's go. It's meaningless. Tianyong waved casually and then calmly walked out of the Lingxiao Pavilion's main door. Jean Daoping still wanted to see Yi Yuan. However, seeing that Tianyong was about to disappear, he hurriedly followed him. Although he didn't participate in this medicine conference at all, just seeing Tianyong's miraculous alchemy skills was enough. This trip to the medicine conference was worth it. Yao Yaohui's eyes widened as he watched the two of them leave. However, he couldn't say a word. From the beginning to the end, Tianyong had only said one sentence. However, it was this one sentence. It directly broke Yi Yuan's mentality and caused the cauldron to explode. Moreover, even if Yi Yuan's cauldron didn't explode, so what? Could the pill he refined compare to the divine pill that attracted the heavenly tribulation in advance? Senior brother Yi Yuan, Yao Yaoi said with difficulty. At this time, Yi Yuan's hands were trembling as he removed all the dregs in the divine alchemy cauldron. He was defeated. He was completely defeated. Hurry up! Hurry up! At this time, a hurried voice suddenly sounded from outside the door. The next moment, 3 terrifyingly powerful auras suddenly appeared outside the Lingxiao Pavilion. 1 was Wu Zun at the peak, and 2 were Wu Zun at the 8th level. What's going on? Everyone in the Lingxiao Pavilion was stunned. The next moment, their pupils shrank. The 3 of them were dressed in white robes and looked ordinary. However, on their chests, there was an emblem that belonged exclusively to Banten Semyon. People from Banten Semyon. Where's the person who just refined the divine pill? Ignoring the stunned alchemists, Wu Zun at the peak rushed in, looked around, and asked hurriedly. An extremely excited expression appeared on his face. He didn't expect to meet a genius who refined a divine pill just by taking a stroll. If he reported this to the sect, he might even be rewarded with a half-step sacred weapon. Chenlun had just opened his mouth when Yi Yuan's voice sounded first in the Lingxiao Pavilion. Chapter 1046. It's me, Yi Yuan shouted loudly. Hearing this, the crowd was stunned. They all looked at Yi Yuan in disbelief. Him? How could it be him? Oh, Wu Zun didn't notice the gazes around him. Instead, he walked forward and glanced at Yi Yuan. You're one of the 3 rising stars of the medicine god sect? Yi Yuan? I didn't expect you to be so strong. Wu Zun glanced at Yi Yuan. The heavenly ice flame was still burning fiercely, and Wu Zun recognized the divine alchemy cauldron. It was the divine alchemy cauldron, the legacy cauldron of the medicine god sect. He immediately confirmed his suspicions. Out of everyone present, only Yi Yuan had a cauldron that had just finished refining a pill. The others only had cauldrons for display. Moreover, Yi Yuan was one of the 3 rising stars. Although it was unexpected that he had refined a divine pill, it wasn't too outrageous. At this moment, Yao Yaoi came to his senses and revealed a sinister smile. Aren't you very strong? No matter how strong you are, the divine pill wasn't refined by you. Only my first senior brother, Yi Yuan, can refine a divine pill of that level. What nonsense are you spouting? At this moment, the eyes of the skinny young man who had exchanged 3 Dragonbone 9-star leaves for the Yin-Yang conversion pill with Tianyang turned red. That divine pill was clearly refined by Grandmaster Yang. The skinny young man roared. Hearing this, the joy that had just appeared on Yi Yuan's face instantly turned into boundless frost. Who gave you the courage to spout nonsense in the Firmament Pavilion's medicine conference? Yi Yuan said coldly with a cold expression. Grandmaster Yang, is that alchemy genius? Who are you? Previously, I exhausted all my effort to refine that divine pill. Everyone here has witnessed it. Why is it that when it comes to your mouth, it becomes something that Grandmaster Yang refined? Yi Yuan said coldly as if he was the one who had refined the divine pill. The skinny young man was stunned. He never expected that. Yi Yuan could be so shameless. That seems to be the case. Peek Wu Zun glanced at Yi Yuan's pale face and trembling hands and nodded slightly. It seemed like this person had really managed to concoct a godly pill. Otherwise, how could he have consumed so much energy? Furthermore, you said Grandmaster Yang. Do you know what his name is? Yi Yuan sneered. Hearing this, the skinny youth was completely stunned. He really didn't know. Tianyang didn't say anything before, so he naturally didn't reveal his name, whether it was his real name or the pseudonym Yang Tian. In other words, other than Jin Daoping and Tianyang himself, no one else knew the name Yang Tian. However, the 2 of them had already left. You actually dared to slander me in front of so many people. If I didn't know that you were born poor, it would be normal for me to feel indignant. If it were someone else, just suppressing you would be considered a light punishment. Yi Yuan's face was full of righteousness. Then he turned his head and said to Peek Wuzun, "After all, the Lord of Bantan Simyun is here. There's no harm in being a little agitated. Let's just pretend that nothing happened this time. I hope the Lord of the Sage sect won't pursue this person." Yi Yuan smiled as gently as a spring breeze. However, looking at this smile, the skinny young man only felt his stomach churn. It was so pretentious and disgusting. However, even so, not a single person present dared to speak the truth. There was no other reason. Even though he had been defeated by Tianyang in an almost one-sided manner, Yi Yuan's strength was still there. To be able to suppress countless geniuses and become one of the 3 rising stars of the Myriad Pill ceremony, competing with Little Princess Tang and Chunlin, Yi Yuan was still a genius. Moreover, with the Medicine God sect behind him and the Medicine God cauldron in his hand, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was the future sect master of the Medicine God sect. Who dared to offend such an existence? Who could offend him? Even Qinluan could only remain silent. Although he was not a commoner disciple, the force behind him was far too weak compared to the Medicine God sect. If he spoke rashly, he would only be inviting trouble. Not bad. Peek Wuzun chuckled when he heard this, showing an extremely satisfied expression. Strong talent and strength. Most importantly, he has a magnanimous heart. This kind of talent is exactly what my Bantan Simyun lacks. Peek Wuzun laughed out loud. The Myriad Pill ceremony was about to begin, but as an elder, he had not recruited many geniuses who could help him achieve good results in the Myriad Pill ceremony. Peek Wuzun was also very worried. But now, a genius who could refine divine pills had suddenly appeared, and had almost taken the initiative to join his sect. How could Peek Wuzun not be happy? As for that person, Yi Yuan has already forgiven your sins. Why don't you hurry up and thank him? Peek Wuzun turned his head and looked at the skinny young man. Hearing this, the skinny young man's face darkened. He was not familiar with Tianyang, but he did not speak for the sake of familiarity. Instead, he spoke for the truth. The divine pills were refined by Tianyang, and the heavenly tribulations were broken by Tianyang. From the beginning to the end, all Yi Yuan did was provoke, taunt, provoke, and then destroy the pills. Just because the Medicine God sect was powerful and no one said anything, he could impersonate someone else and enter Bantan Simyun. Tui, the skinny young man spat a mouthful of saliva on the ground and left without looking back. He did not want to participate in this stupid elixir banquet. You don't know what's good for you. Peek Wuzun's face darkened when he saw this. He had kindly asked this person to lower his head and apologize, but this person did not give him any face at all. He even spat on him. It's normal for a young man to have a bad temper. I hope you don't blame him. Yi Yuan's expression was calm as he chuckled. However, there was a flash of anger in his eyes. This skinny young man dared to disrespect him time and time again, trying to ruin his plan. That's right. Peek Wuzun's expression quickly returned to normal when he heard this. This was Dan Sinaville, and it was not convenient for him to make a move. With Yi Yuan's words, he had a way out. Let's go. You alone are enough for this elixir banquet. The Peak Marshal Honorable patted Yi Yuan's shoulder and laughed out loud. Yi Yuan smiled and stood with his hand behind his back. He followed behind Peek Wuzun and walked out of Lingxiao Pavilion. Suddenly, High Heaven Pavilion fell into a deathly silence. Ha 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 ha. In the end, Yao Yaohui's extremely carefree laughter broke the silence of the crowd. The effect of Tsang Long's sky-dominating pill is really fierce. In Shaoan Restaurant, Tianyang clicked his tongue as he played with the Tsang Long's sky-dominating pill in his hand, which was constantly releasing surging power, then withdrawing it, and then releasing it again. He had only absorbed a trace of it before. He felt that trace of energy rampaging in his body. If he had not reacted quickly and refined it, he would have been injured. Even with the strength of the ancestral dragon body, he would have been injured. It seems that the Tsang Long's sky-dominating pill needs a certain environment to take it. Tianyang chuckled. Then he took back the Tsang Long's sky-dominating pill and closed his eyes to cultivate. There were less than 3 months until the Myriad Pill ceremony. Chapter 10:47. 3 months was an extremely short time for a cultivator. Even Tianyang, who had only cultivated for a few hundred years, could feel how short these 3 months were. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. Today was the start of the myriad pill ceremony. So fast, Tianyang sighed as his gaze pierced through the layers of clouds and looked at the blue sky. 3 months was really too short. He had yet to successfully cultivate the body of the Dragon King, and this day had already arrived. However, although there was not much improvement in his physical body, Tianyang had made significant progress in other aspects. His cultivation had stabilized at the peak of Wu Zun's LV3 realm. He only needed a little opportunity to break through. The power of his primordial spirit had also improved by leaps and bounds. At this moment, he was not too far away from Wu Zun's LV7 realm. If Tianyang were to face off against the Desolation Divine, Hound Huang CK, or the Black Robe Man, he would not need to waste too much time. He would only need a few strikes to kill them. Is that so? Jin Daoping, who was standing at the side, looked puzzled. In the past 3 months, he had followed Jiang Lin everywhere to learn from each other, and his alchemy cultivation had improved greatly. He could not wait to wait a little longer. However, these cultivators were all gathered here for the myriad pill ceremony. No matter how long they waited, it was useless. Let's go. Tianyang smiled and stepped out of the door, heading toward the center of Dansinaville. The center of Dansinaville was a huge square that covered an area close to half of the Arctic state. The plaza was the location where the myriad pill grand ceremony would be held. The myriad pill ceremony was the biggest alchemy event in the Eastern Sky Divine region. It was also the most powerful alchemy event in the entire eastern part of the Xintian Great World. Countless alchemists were overwhelmed with emotions as they rushed towards the myriad Dan sacred city. All of them wanted to win a place in the myriad pill ceremony, become famous alchemists. This time, I must go back with a good ranking. Chunlun's expression was resolute. He had not been idle during these 3 months. It was unknown how many alchemists who had been famous for a long time had been challenged by him. Although most of them had failed, Chunlun was able to continue to gain experience and strengthen himself. In the last 300 matches, Chunlun's winning rate had already reached 60%. Even if he encountered a 7th grade peak alchemist who had been famous for a long time, he still had the power to fight. If you can get into the top 10 of the myriad pill ceremony, not only will you have the opportunity to enter the Banten Semyon, but you will also have the qualifications to observe the myriad pill sacred ceremony. The 10,000 Pill Canon is one of the most powerful alchemy books in the profound sky world. Although it is incomplete, most of the alchemy recipes and alchemy insights still exist. If I get the chance to observe it, I'm confident that I'll be able to make a breakthrough to Minor Saint in a short time. Chunlun was overwhelmed with emotions as he strode towards the center of Dansinaville. Do your best, Tang Xiaoan said with a smile as he watched little Princess Tang stride towards the center of Dansinaville. All right, little Princess Tang smiled and then turned her head. Alchemy fire was raging in her eyes. Although you haven't done much in the past 3 months, you've been observing your master's pill refinement. I know this. A white-robed old man said to the young man in front of him with a smile on his face. He was Wu Zun, the peak alchemist who had appeared at the Lingshao Pavilion's medicine fair 3 months ago. Naturally, this young man was also taken away by him. Yi Yuan. Therefore, the myriad pill ceremony this time is not just a challenge to compete for a spot, but also a touchstone for you. With your ability to refine divine pills, you'll definitely be in the top 10 of the myriad pill ceremony, let alone the top 5. Wu Zun, the peak alchemist, laughed loudly and looked at Yi Yuan with great satisfaction. Yi Yuan was able to refine divine pills, study so hard, and have a broad mind that forgives others. It was impossible to find such a successor, even if one searched for him with a lantern. But he didn't expect to run into it. Yes, Master. Yi Yuan nodded as the corners of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. Why did he impersonate Tianyang? Of course, it was for the past 3 months. In the past 3 months, He had no idea how many pill recipes he had stolen from the peak martial highness realm cultivators, and how many of their teachings he had received. The sect master of the medicine god sect was only Wu Zun, the peak alchemist. Now, with Wu Zun's teachings on alchemy, his alchemy cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. Yang Tian, is it? Just you wait. Now, even if you refine the divine pills, I can refine them too. In the myriad pills ceremony this time, I'll make you look for your teeth all over the ground. And that commoner alchemist, surnamed Zhu, you're all dead meat in the myriad pills ceremony this time. Yi Yuan's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. He then raised his head and returned to his original appearance. He smiled. Well then, master, I'm leaving. Go. Wu Zun smiled kindly. It was a joyous occasion to have such a disciple at such an old age. In other places, the skinny young man, Yao Yao Wei, and the other alchemists walked out of their rooms and headed to the same place. The myriad pills ceremony, the grand event of the entire alchemy world. Even some old monsters who had been famous for a long time did not hesitate to put aside their pride and come out of seclusion just to participate in this myriad pills ceremony and get the chance to observe the ceremony. Among them, there was no lack of minor saint grade. Outside the endless galaxy in the Tianshao Great World. Boom, boom, boom. Streaks of blood red lightning tore through space and smashed toward a figure. The destructive force it contained felt like it was going to tear the mountains and rivers apart. Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique, third style. A crisp and delicate voice rang out. In the next moment, a long sword with an icy aura slashed out. The powerful true yuan of a peak half-step martial honorable instantly exploded. Nine Nether Saint body. The blood-red lightning transformed into a terrifying giant dragon. It roared and charged toward the figure angrily. However, 9 snow-white foxtails suddenly appeared behind the figure. He slashed out with his sword. Thousands of miles of ice, thousands of miles of snow. The entire world turned into a world of ice and snow. Even the destructive blood-red lightning was frozen. Then it shattered. Break! With another soft shout, the figure suddenly trembled. Between heaven and earth, streams of world essence emerged and were absorbed by the figure. Half Wu Zun's aura also skyrocketed rapidly. Then, Wu Zun's realm level 1. The terrifying thunderclouds in the sky also dissipated and were replaced by clear skies. Congratulations to Alliance Leader Ling for stepping into Wu Zun's realm. Feeling this terrifying aura, the entire Tianshao Great World suddenly erupted into roars. In just over a year, the Tianshao Great World had given birth to a second Wu Zun. Wu Zun is finally here. The figure withdrew his long sword and clenched his fist. Feeling the power that he could only see in one person, he could not help but tear up. Chapter 1048. On Danseineville, the center. Even in Danseineville, not everyone was an alchemist. But at this moment, a sea of people had gathered in the huge square in the center. More than 70% of them were alchemists. As one of the few grand alchemy events in the Xiantian Great World, the myriad pill ceremony had attracted most of the alchemists in the Eastern Divine Prefecture. These alchemists might not be strong, but they would not miss out on this opportunity. However, there was a huge empty space in the center of the square. It was not that the other alchemists did not want to enter, but that a saint had set up a restriction to keep everyone outside. It was equivalent to a martial arts arena. Inside the restriction was the place where all the powerful alchemists could show off their skills. Outside the restriction were the audience seats. However, both the martial arts arena and the audience seats were huge. TSK, I didn't expect the myriad pill ceremony to have so many people. In the sky, an old man looked down at the sea of people and the empty streets of Danseineville. He could not help but exclaim, "Old Monster Sue, you don't understand. The myriad pill ceremony is held by a saint sect. How could it be short of people? Even an old monster like you is lured out, right?" At the side, an old man's figure slowly appeared. He looked at the old man and said with a smile. The old man called Old Monster Sue chuckled. "I just found out that Bantan Simeon was willing to take out the myriad pill sacred canon. Naturally, I don't know about the grand occasion of the myriad pill ceremony. However, you, Old Monster Lin, have thousands of years of cultivation. Why are you here to participate in the myriad pill ceremony? Of course. Old Demon Lin smiled faintly. Such a grand event is rare. Although we have devoted ourselves to studying alchemy, it is impossible for us to enter the saint realm. Naturally, we have to come to this grand event. Moreover, Banten Simeon is a rare alchemy saint sect. Although the sacred canon, the myriad pill sacred canon, is incomplete, most of it has been recovered. What is recorded in it is of great use to us. Old Monster Lin smiled. Old Monster Sue nodded slightly. It was not only them. Many of the alchemists who had become famous a long time ago, yet still decided to participate in the myriad pill grand ceremony, all had the same goal in mind. What they valued was no longer the glory of the myriad pill ceremony, but the ceremony itself. They wholeheartedly pursued the Tao, and they only wished to become saints in the Tao of alchemy. Wait a minute. At this moment, Old Demon Lin's expression suddenly changed, and his aura was forcefully restrained. The two people who were flying in the air were instantly unable to maintain their flying state and were directly pressed down. An incomparably powerful aura swept across the entire place at this instant. Above 1.5 meters, there was a terrifying pressure that could not be resisted. In merely an instant, tens of thousands of people bent their backs. Their faces were filled with shock. This pressure had already surpassed that of Wu Zun at his peak, but it was still far from the level of a saint. In other words, this time, Banten Simeon actually sent a half-saint. Even though Banten Simeon was the strongest alchemy faction in the Eastern Sky Divine region and had a saint in charge, a half-saint was equivalent to a great elder, a grand elder, or even a deputy sect leader. It's the elder of Dragon Mountain. At this moment, someone exclaimed as they looked at the hunched old man walking in the air as if he was walking on flat ground. The old man was not tall. Even if he stood up straight, he would not be 1.5 meters tall. Now that he was hunched, he was only 1.5 meters tall. His face was also very ordinary. It was full of wrinkles, and his skin was even a little dry. If it were not for the fact that the dragon scepter in his hand was so special, everyone would have thought that this person was just an old man with one foot in the grave that could be seen everywhere. However, no one present dared to underestimate this ordinary-looking old man. This was because he was known as the Elder of Dragon Mountain. Banten Simeon, Great Elder, Peak Lesser Saint Alchemist. Cultivation Base, Half-Saint. I didn't expect the Elder of Dragon Mountain to come this time. Someone sucked in a breath of cold air and fell into deep shock. In the past, it was already good enough to have a Peak Wu Zun in charge. This Peak Wu Zun was mostly not someone with real power. However, although the Elder of Dragon Mountain was dedicated to alchemy, his influence in Banten Simeon was not even comparable to that of the deputy sect leader. An old monster who had lived for 10,000 years, a half-saint alchemist who was only one step away from entering the saint realm. Under the pressure of a half-saint, no one could stand up. Even Old Monster Sue and Old Monster Lin, who were also lesser saint, could only bow at this moment. Even though they were all lesser saint, there was a huge difference between them. They were just beginners. They could not be compared to the Elder of Dragon Mountain, who was a half-saint alchemist who had accumulated 1,000 years of experience. Oh, at this moment, the Elder of Dragon Mountain, who was just about to speak, suddenly noticed a young man who was much taller in the sea of people. His expression was calm, and the power of his primordial spirit fluctuated, faintly forming the radiance of stars. This young man was the only one standing in the area that the Elder of Dragon Mountain was facing, among the 130,000 people. A primordial spirit protection? This control is a little interesting. A look of surprise flashed across the Elder of Dragon Mountain's turbid eyes. Then, he no longer looked at Tianyang. Although Tianyang was a little special, he could not attract the attention of the Elder of Dragon Mountain, who had lived for 10,000 years. There was a segment like this in every myriad pill ceremony. From time to time, someone would resist the pressure and stand proudly. However, this time, it was the strongest pressure in 10,000 years. That person was Tianyang. Using the secret technique of 7 stars as a foundation, he gathered the power of his primordial spirit and protected himself within, like the stars surrounding the moon. That enormous pressure acted on Tianyang's body. Tianyang probably could not withstand it. However, once the secret technique of 7 stars was used, standing was no problem. If a Saint Realm Sword Dao was used, it would probably be able to cut through the pressure in an instant. However, that would be too eye-catching. Tianyang still wanted to keep a low profile. Now, the Elder of Dragon Mountain spoke with a trembling voice. His old voice resounded throughout the entire square, allowing the millions of people to hear it clearly. Myriad Pill Sacred Token out. In the next moment, everyone discovered that the Myriad Pill Sacred Token that they had hidden in their spatial bags, spatial rings, or in their bodies had suddenly released rays of light. Rays of light shot out from the center of the Myriad Pill Sacred Token. Then, all the Myriad Pill Sacred Tokens flew into the sky at the same time. Out of the millions of people, only tens of thousands had the Myriad Pill Sacred Token. Only 1% of the people could participate in the Myriad Pill ceremony. Those who hold the Myriad Pill Sacred Token can enter the first round and undergo the screening. The Elder of Dragon Mountain spoke. Then, within the restriction, all of a sudden, a deep spatial door opened. Chapter 1049. First round, Illusory Demon Road. Elder Long Shan spoke indifferently. Apart from those who didn't know anything, everyone's expression changed slightly. In this universe, no matter which world it was, the Demon Clan was an extremely terrifying existence. Even if the Xintian Great World didn't suffer a great calamity like the Tianshao Great World, they still knew how terrifying the Demon Clan was. The Illusory Demon was one of the most famous branches of the Demon Clan. Illusory Demon Road. I believe there's no need for this old man to elaborate. Elder Long Shan's aged voice sounded. His stooped and short body seemed like it could be blown away by the wind at any time, but no one dared to underestimate him. They all looked at Elder Long Shan attentively. The Illusory Demon is proficient in illusions, and the power of the primordial spirit can resist illusions. The last time this Illusory Demon Road was used was 500 years ago. It should have recovered well. Those who have a Myriad Pill Sacred Badge can enter the second round after stepping through this Illusory Demon Road. If you can't pass, then withdraw. Elder Long Shan's voice was calm, but it made everyone's heart jump fiercely when it landed in their hearts. Illusory Demon Road? What's going on this year? Elder Long Shan appeared and personally hosted the Myriad Pill ceremony, but he actually brought out the Illusory Demon Road? This is a terrifying treasure left behind by a demon venerable. It's second only to the Illusory Demon Clan's Illusory Demon Ancient Book. If an ordinary person enters, they'll be killed in minutes. It's said that Banten Simeon is going to make a big move this time. Everyone discussed animatedly, and their expressions weren't very good. Most of the things that had the word demon in them would be extremely difficult to deal with. Moreover, this Illusory Demon Road already had a fierce reputation 500 years ago. The Myriad Pill ceremony was originally a great ceremony for many alchemists to exchange pointers and compete. However, every time the Illusory Demon Road was brought out, at least one alchemist would be buried in the Illusory Demon Road. The most time was 500 years ago, when 3 high 7th grade alchemists and 1 peak 7th grade alchemist died directly. Not only did it depend on the power of the primordial spirit, it also depended on luck. If one was lucky and it was just an ordinary illusion along the way, then forget it. However, if one was unlucky and encountered the resentment left behind by the Illusory Demon Venerable, he was afraid that he would follow in the footsteps of those 3 alchemists. What the hell is Banten Simeon doing? Yi Yuan's expression was extremely ugly. The Illusory Demon Road, such a dangerous thing, was used as a test. He had originally thought that he had obtained Wu Zun's alchemy Dao insights and many pill recipes, which gave him the strength to compete for first place. However, In the first round of the illusory demon road, what he had obtained from Wu Zun at his peak was completely useless. It depends on the strength of your primordial spirit, the control of your primordial spirit, and your willpower. It's all right. Shen Luan shrugged, not caring at all. Those who wish to leave, destroy your own myriad pill, sacred token, and you'll be able to leave. The rest of you, enter the illusory demon road. The Dragon Mountain Elder said indifferently. His tone was extremely flat, as if the ruckus from the alchemist did not affect him at all. In reality, it didn't affect him at all. As a half-saint of alchemy, an existence that was only a hair's breadth away from stepping into the sage realm, the Dragon Mountain Elder disdained to compete with these alchemists. The illusory demon road was right here. Whether to enter or not, it was up to him to choose. Let's go. In the end, no one was willing to destroy their own myriad pill sacred token and withdraw from the myriad pill ceremony. After all, they had traveled thousands of miles and even crossed countless provinces just to come to the myriad pill ceremony. If they withdrew, wouldn't they have made a wasted trip? Moreover, the appearance of the demon venerable's resentment in the illusory demon road was only a low probability event. What if they didn't encounter it? No one withdrew. Not bad. Now, enter the illusory demon road. The Dragon Mountain Elder glanced at the people holding the myriad pill sacred token, nodded slightly, and then made a move. The deep, pitch-black spatial passageway suddenly enlarged. It expanded with the wind like a pitch-black hole, incomparably deep and incomparably powerful. Waves of demonic aura also spread out from the illusory demon road. Everyone could not help but frown when they sensed it. The demon race was born to be at odds with the various great worlds. Although the demon venerable who left the illusory demon road behind had died countless years ago, this demonic aura with ferocious resentment still made everyone extremely uncomfortable. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of something tearing through the air rang out. Just as the passageway stabilized, all the participants, tens of thousands of alchemists of grade 7 and above, stepped into the illusory demon road. Tianyang was no exception. It was pitch black and deep, as if it was filled with strange black air currents. The surroundings were completely dark, without the slightest bit of light. One could only see what was in this darkness by relying on one's primordial spirit. This is the illusory demon road. It doesn't look like anything. Tianyang looked around and took a step forward. However, the surrounding scene suddenly changed. Why? Why do you have to leave? If you don't leave, my Zhang family of heavenly Tao will not be destroyed. A mournful cry came from his side. Tianyang's mind shook as he entered this scene. The raging fire soared into the sky, and countless bright lights bloomed in the huge courtyard. The plaque of the Zhang family of heavenly Tao that recorded the chaotic 8-extremity saber was also ignited by the spiritual fire at this moment. It was a scene of destruction. If it weren't for you, my Zhang family of heavenly Tao wouldn't have offended the Li family and the Yang family, and we wouldn't have offended the Wang family and that array sage. At this moment, Zhang Tianda also crawled out. His legs were broken, blood was gushing out, and his eyes were dyed red with blood. Endless resentment was released from Zhang Tianda's body. Hate, hate, hate. A tremendous amount of resentment surged towards Heavenly Sun. If Tianyang relaxed a little and let the resentment enter his divine soul, then Tianyang would completely fall into the illusion and become the first person to die on the illusory demon road. Tianyang's eyelids narrowed slightly. He lowered his gaze and looked at the blood and fire in front of him. I gave you the saber technique, but you don't know how to use it. What does it have to do with me? What? Zhang Qingqing was stunned, as if he couldn't imagine that Tianyang would say such a thing. The next moment, everything in the surroundings had completely vanished. All of this was just an illusion. I thought there was something, but this is the result? Tianyang curled his lips, released the power of his primordial spirit, and walked forward. After experiencing the 9 palaces illusion, Tianyang had an extremely strong immunity to ordinary illusions. Even if this illusion could interfere with people's perception and make them mistake it for reality. But Tianyang was still able to maintain a trace of clarity in his heart, and Tianyang didn't notice it. In the space bag, the illusory demon ancient book was glowing slightly. Impossible. Impossible. I refined the divine pill. No one else can refine the divine pill except me. Yi Yuan let out a wild roar, his face full of anger. How dare you slander me? Go to hell. He punched out. The illusion shattered. Chapter 1050. Fantasy Demon Road. 3,000 years ago, a treasure left behind by a surviving illusory demon venerable. In fact, the illusory demon road wasn't refined by the illusory demon exalted. Instead, it was refined after the illusory demon exalted was killed. It was unknown where Banten Simeon had obtained this treasure and used it for the test. However, this also made the myriad pills ceremony extremely dangerous. As expected of the illusory demon road where many powerful alchemists have died, this illusion is getting stronger and stronger. Most of the illusions could be broken through by relying on various kinds of inner interrogation. However, the illusions formed by the illusory demon road were different. Compared to the Great Void Emperor's 1,000-level refining heart pagoda, it was much more powerful. It could directly create illusions in the sea of souls, and all previous methods would be erased by the power of the illusory demon road itself. In other words, if he wanted to break through the illusory demon road, otherwise his will would be as firm as a blade, allowing him to know his true self at all times. That way, most illusions would not be able to do anything to him. Tianyang was one of them. Another way was to use various methods to break through the illusion. The strongest method was undoubtedly to use the power of the origin spirit to block the illusion or to instantly shatter the illusion. Princess Tang was one of them. My father said that there is no need to consider whether this kind of illusion is real or not. Everything can be settled with one punch. If it doesn't work, I'll use 2 punches. Little Princess Tang giggled as the monstrous power of her essence soul surged in her hand as she punched out. Boom! The illusory realm in front of him shattered like a mirror, turning into light dust that blotted the sky. However, just as the illusion was about to shatter, little Princess Tang's pupils constricted as her expression changed drastically. A violent and turbulent airflow quickly gathered all the surrounding gray airflow. It was as if a storm was forming in this pitch-black space. What the hell is that? At this moment, Yi Yuan, who had just forcefully broken through an illusion and taken a step forward, was shocked as he stared at the scene before him in disbelief. The space inside the illusory demon road was very special. Although it wasn't completely isolated, there were certain restrictions between them. They could be said to be independent of each other. However, this gray storm had appeared in front of everyone. Shit! Chunlun's expression turned ugly as he stared at the gray storm in front of him. His hands were trembling slightly. He had been preparing for the myriad pill ceremony for decades. Basically, he had already memorized all the information he could find. The illusory demon road had a notorious reputation for slaughtering alchemists, so he was naturally well aware of it. He also knew what had appeared during the few times when most people had died. Demon sovereign. Resentment. Chunlun gritted his teeth and said hoarsely. In the next moment, a terrifying blade of resentment suddenly rushed out of the gray storm and attacked countless people. Ah! Screams resounded in the illusory demon road. What the hell? Tianyang casually waved his hand, and his ancestral dragon physique unleashed its divine might, directly erasing the resentment of the demon venerable from this world. It looks like Wu Zun, but it doesn't have much strength. This blade of resentment is too weak. Tianyang was speechless as he looked at the blade of resentment that he had casually shattered. The power of this kind of resentment itself was not considered strong. It only relied on the power of illusions and its own characteristics to directly attack the depths of the primordial spirit, causing incomparably powerful damage. However, Tianyang's was like a blade. This pitch-black space filled with illusions had no effect on him at all. How much power could a mere resentment have? Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, Countless sharp blades shot out from the gray storm again. Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. His arms did not move, but two balls of pitch-black flames burned in his eyes. True flames of destruction. Break. Wu Zun's primordial spirit power at the peak of the 6th level bloomed. A terrifying pressure was released in this pitch-black space, like a primordial spirit hurricane. It was on par with the gray storm. The sharp blades that shot out were completely burned by the true flames of destruction in the primordial spirit hurricane. However, this demon's sovereign strength was probably half a step into the half-saint realm when he was alive. Tianyang frowned slightly. The attack released by the gray storm did not pose any threat to him. However, the gray storm itself was different. This was the main body of the demon's sovereign's resentment. The demon's sovereign's resentment that had accumulated for thousands of years had never weakened. Hundreds of years ago, it had killed 4 powerful pill refiners who were at least advanced 7th-grade pill refiners. In terms of primordial spirit power, it was possible for a pill refiner of that level to look down on a region. However, they still died in the illusory demon road. In all likelihood, they had killed their way into the gray storm and were swallowed by the demon's sovereign's resentment. Although Tianyang was not afraid of those pill refiners, he was still somewhat cautious about this gray storm that he did not know the depth of. It's a bit difficult. Tianyang frowned. At this moment, a powerful aura was suddenly released from the space bag. As if it was going to break through the space bag, Tianyang revealed a trace of surprise and opened the space bag. An ancient book that released a purplish-black light appeared in front of Tianyang and floated in mid-air. It was clear that the same dark color would only be swallowed by the surrounding pitch black. However, the purplish-black light emitted by this ancient book was like the most dazzling sun in this world. It illuminated the entire place. I almost forgot that there was something like the illusory demon ancient book. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes lit up. 7 stars revolved, and a huge amount of primordial spirit power was injected into the illusory demon ancient book. With the injection of primordial spirit power, the illusory demon ancient book immediately bloomed with rays of light and rushed into the gray storm without hesitation. The moment the illusory demon ancient book rushed in, Tianyang clearly felt that nearly half of the gray storm's resentment was instantly swallowed. The demon sovereign's resentment that had not weakened for thousands of years was firmly suppressed by the illusory demon ancient book. As expected, even if it's refined by extracting souls, it's far inferior to the natal treasure refined by the illusory demon itself. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes lit up. At this moment, the illusory demon ancient book shone again and directly swallowed the entire gray storm. A demonic purplish-black light appeared on the surface of the illusory demon ancient book. In the next moment, the illusory demon ancient book rushed forward. Along the way, an unknown amount of gray air was forcibly pulled out and swallowed by the illusory demon ancient book. As for Tianyang, he followed closely behind, silently watching the illusory demon ancient book's robbery as if the demon clan had entered a village, while rushing towards the exit. Previously, he still needed to spend a lot of time to deal with the illusion. But now, the gray air was gone. What illusion was there to deal with? 3 minutes later, the illusory demon ancient book seemed to be full and automatically flew back into the space bag, silently refining the gray air. As for Tianyang, he looked at the exit in front of him, which was only 3 steps away, and walked out. There was no one around, it seemed. Chapter 1051. It was an instant kill. There was nothing in the surroundings. Even Elder Longshan was still dozing off at the entrance. Besides Tianyang, there was nothing else at the entrance. Even the dust had been sucked in by the illusory demon road. At the same time, there was no sound in the entire place. 10 minutes? 15 minutes? 20 minutes? The illusory demon road was very dangerous. Even if most alchemists didn't enter it personally, they could guess it from its fierce reputation. The illusory demon road was definitely not easy to pass. Even those from some powerful alchemy factions wouldn't dare to say that they could pass through the illusory demon road unscathed, let alone. It only took 20 minutes. Dead silence. The whole place was dead silent. All eyes were focused on Tianyang. Their eyes were shining with disbelief. Who was this person? Why was he faster than the three rookies, Chunlun, Princess Tang, and Yi Yuan? Although the Firmament Pavilion's medicine conference was very famous, it wasn't to the point where everyone knew about it. Although Yi Yuan was one of the three rookies, not everyone paid attention to his every move at all times. In the past 3 months, the attention had faded. Everyone had forgotten about Tianyang, the existence of the younger generation of the medicine god sect. There's some food. Tianyang glanced at the empty illusory demon road and muttered. He casually found a place and closed his eyes to rest. At the same time, the power of his primordial spirit spread out and poured into the space bag. He was very curious about what the illusory demon ancient book would become after absorbing so much power from the illusory demon road. Inside the space bag, the purple-black illusory demon ancient book quietly floated. Streams of black chi surged above the book. Purple light swallowed and spat out, and gray chi constantly entered the illusory demon ancient book, turning into a purple-black light that surrounded it. A strange and powerful force circulated around the illusory demon ancient book. If Tianyang hadn't sensed that the illusory demon ancient book was still under his control, he would have died. Otherwise, he would have thought that the illusory demon ancient book was about to rebel. This gray stream of air should be the resentment of the demon sovereign from the illusory devil road. I didn't expect it to be so easily swallowed by the illusory devil ancient book. Tianyang muttered to himself. Then, his primordial spirit moved slightly and opened the illusion fiend ancient book. Immediately, streaks of terrifying, illusory, demonic force burst out from it. Petty tricks. Tianyang let out a faint smile as he activated the Phantom Demon ancient book and absorbed the Phantom Demon force into it. On the pale pages of the illusion fiend ancient book, strange characters suddenly appeared. The strokes were incomplete, the words were distorted, and the colors were constantly changing. Just looking at it was enough to give one a headache. However, Tianyang had the illusion fiend ancient book, so he knew what those words meant. The demon race's characters are so ugly. Tianyang raised his eyebrows. What the hell was this? Just looking at it was enough to make one's head spin. Not to mention, these words contained the power of the illusory demon. It was likely that those with weaker cultivation would find their minds in a mess if they were to take a look at it. However, this demon race's characters are quite secretive. Tianyang let out a faint smile. Then, he extracted the information from this piece of paper. In the next moment, Tianyang's pupils contracted slightly, revealing a trace of shock. Damn! Demon, sovereign martial technique? Sacred martial, first style? Finally, I broke it. In the illusory devil road, Yi Yuan had blood at the corner of his mouth and his face was extremely pale. No matter how strong the primordial spirit was, there would be a time when it was exhausted. What's more, although Yi Yuan's primordial spirit was powerful, it was only at the level of Wu Zun's 6th layer. It was a little weaker than little Princess Tang and Chunlun, let alone Tianyang. His own willpower. Forget it. He could forcibly impersonate Tianyang and shamelessly steal the secrets of the peak Wu Zun. How strong could his willpower be? This illusory devil road is really dangerous. Yi Yuan wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth, revealing a trace of lingering fear. The demon sovereign's resentment was too strong. Even though he had used all his means and used the life-saving treasure given by the medicine god sect, he almost couldn't withstand the attack of the demon sovereign's resentment. If the demon sovereign's resentment hadn't suddenly fluctuated wildly at the last moment, giving him a chance to escape, he would have lost his life there. However, since my luck is so good, it means that I'm the first to escape this demon sovereign's resentment. Ha! The number one person in this illusory devil road is indeed me. Yi Yuan. Yi Yuan laughed wildly. The next moment, he took another step forward. He thought that after overcoming the demon sovereign's resentment, everything would be smooth sailing. However, Yi Yuan suddenly felt that the terrifying, illusory devil power attacked again. It pulled him into an illusion. He was completely unguarded. Too strong. Shen Luan's expression was solemn. His Taoist robe was already tattered, revealing the battle armor that was also riddled with scars inside. If it weren't for the protection of these two supreme-grade spiritual weapons, the demon sovereign's resentment would have taken his life. However, according to my understanding, I've only finished a small part of the illusory devil road. There are still huge challenges ahead. Shen Luan muttered to himself, then took another step forward. Space distorted, and the illusion reappeared. The sun and moon alternated, and the stars flickered. Tianyang had already closed his eyes to rest for almost 18 hours. There was even a trace of dawn in the east, but there was still no one around him. So weak. Tianyang looked around, speechless. Even if he had the illusory devil ancient book, he could easily kill them all. However, at least one of these people could keep up with his pace. His was like a sword. Even if he didn't have the illusory devil ancient book, he could easily deal with those illusions. None of these people had a willpower that was comparable to his. In fact, in the entire Xintian Great World, there might be. However, in the Myriad Pill ceremony, in the tens of thousands of people who could obtain the Myriad Pill Sacred Order, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After all, not every alchemist had died twice. Finally, after a full day, Tianyang almost couldn't help but cultivate. At the exit of the illusory devil road, there was a fluctuation. A young man covered in wounds walked out from it. The illusory realm was not a simple illusion. If one was injured in the illusion, they would also suffer the same injuries. If one died in the illusion, even if one's body was not damaged, one's soul would still be destroyed. It's actually Chunlin, who was seriously injured, narrowed his eyes. Looking at Tianyang, who was so bored that he yawned, he cursed in his heart. 3 minutes later, the black-haired little girl, who was in a sorry state but fortunately had no scars, also walked out. When she saw Tianyang, her face also showed an incomparably surprised expression. An hour later, a man with an unknown name walked out. His steps were steady, and his breath was long. 2 hours later, Jiang Lin walked out. 3 hours later, Jin Daoping and Wu Qingshan walked out. Finally, just as the illusory devil road was about to close, the exit of the illusory devil road flickered, and a person rushed out. Ha ha! I, Yi Yuan, am indeed the fastest one. Seeing that there was no one at the exit, Yi Yuan suddenly laughed crazily. Then, Yi Yuan looked around. Countless strange gazes shot at his face. Chapter 1052. What's going on? I'm one of the 3 rising stars, the strongest genius of the medicine god sect, and a successor of the divine medicine cauldron. How could I lose to so many people? Even Wu Zun, who had been watching from the side, frowned slightly. Then he stretched out his arms. Although the illusory demon road is dangerous, it's nothing for a genius who can refine a divine pill. Although Yi Yuan is in a sorry state, he doesn't have any injuries at all. It seems that he's pretending to be weak. As expected of a genius who can refine a divine pill. You're indeed extraordinary. Even the simplest test of the first round is treated so seriously. The peak marshal honorable smiled. Beside him, the Dragon Mountain elder raised his eyebrows. It's been a long time. Is there something wrong with third junior brother's brain? Ha! After a moment of mental breakdown, Yi Yuan's expression returned to its cold state. He looked at the crowd indifferently. You're not bad. You can defeat me when I only use 10% of my strength. Then, Yi Yuan turned around and went to a corner. He looked at Tianyang, who had his eyes closed and was resting, with a hint of mockery on his face. From the looks of it, you've gone through a lot of hardships in order to reach this place. That's true. After all, the illusory demon road is so difficult that even the resentment of a demon sovereign appeared. Even if you have some ability, it's impossible to pass it so easily. Yi Yuan sneered. Although Tianyang didn't have any injuries on his body and his clothes were extremely clean and flawless, in Yi Yuan's eyes, this was a sign of serious injury. The illusory demon road was refined by a peak Wu Zun level illusory demon sovereign. How could he pass it so easily? For a cultivator, it was easy to instantly clean the body of injuries and stains. It just depended on whether the person was willing to use it. Tianyang didn't have any injuries on his body. It was obvious that he was in a sorry state and had to use this method to cover it up. The more he thought about it, the more certain Yi Yuan was. Ha ha ha. So what if you refined a divine pill? In these 3 months, you didn't receive the guidance of a peak Wu Zun like me. I'm improving rapidly, but you're still in the same place. That's not right. The resentment of the demon lord might not necessarily be encountered. Sigh, there's no need to explain. I know. I only hope that you can be down to earth and recognize reality. Don't indulge in the past. That's all I have to say. It's up to you whether you want to listen or not. Yi Yuan let out a long sigh and pretended to be profound as he walked back. Seeing this, Tianyang was baffled. Is there something wrong with his eyes? On the other hand, Qinluan was aware of everything that was taking place, causing a strange expression to appear on his face. He wasn't the only one. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at Yi Yuan, who was the last to come out, with a strange expression on their faces. Eldest senior brother, Yao Yao Wei, who was outside the restriction, was still sad because he had been eliminated. However, he couldn't care less now. This guy was the first to come out, so you're just a little faster than me. After receiving Yao Yaohui's message, Yi Yuan immediately nodded. That's true, with his level. Wait a minute. Before Yi Yuan could finish his sentence, his pupils suddenly shrank. What's his rank? First, Yao Yaoi said helplessly. And compared to Qinluan, who came in second, he's faster by day. Yuan, at this moment, he also noticed the gazes from the surroundings. Instantly, his face turned green and purple, as if he had eaten **T. That's all I have to say. It's up to you whether you want to listen or not. Down to earth and recognize reality? There's no need to explain. I know. Every sentence was like a slap to his face, even though no one said anything. But now, Yi Yuan felt that his face was swollen. Although this first place is quite strong, he's too ostentatious. At this moment, Wu Zun, who was at the peak, frowned and said, although Yi Yuan doesn't know his rank, he said so much out of goodwill. However, not only did this guy ignore him, he even allowed others to expose him. Isn't he deliberately making things difficult for Yi Yuan? The Banten Simeon can't let such a person with such bad conduct enter so easily. Wu Zun at the peak said. Hearing this, Elder Dragon Mountain glanced at Wu Zun at the peak with a subtle look in his eyes. It was clearly Yi Yuan who humiliated him first, and he still wanted Tianyang to help him not slap his face. Was this guy a saint? However, Elder Dragon Mountain and Tianyang were neither relatives nor friends. Instead, he was closer to Wu Zun at the peak. He couldn't be bothered with Tianyang. The illusory demon road this time is not bad. At this moment, Elder Dragon Mountain walked out and glanced at everyone with his turbid eyes. He paused for a moment on Tianyang before leaving. In the past, there were very few people who didn't die in the illusory demon road. If there were, it was because the demon sovereign's resentment didn't erupt. This time, the demon sovereign's resentment erupted. However, the most serious thing was only a serious injury. Compared to the countless times before, who knows how much stronger it is? Elder Dragon Mountain spoke. Hearing this, everyone nodded with lingering fear. Previously, just by listening to the descriptions of others, they didn't think much of it. What was the resentment of a demon sovereign who had died for thousands of years? Moreover, it had been activated so many times before. However, this time, after personally experiencing the terrifying demon sovereign's resentment, everyone completely shut their mouths. The terror of the demon sovereign's resentment far exceeded their imagination. If it wasn't for the demon sovereign's resentment suddenly disappearing, the number of people who died this time would have been even more than 500 years ago. As for Elder Dragon Mountain, he didn't know that the demon sovereign's resentment had suddenly disappeared. He could only roughly sense the situation in the illusory demon road, But he only knew that the demon sovereign's resentment had disappeared early this time. There are still 721 people left. Not bad. Elder Dragon Mountain spoke again. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but fall silent. 721 people. There were tens of thousands of people who had obtained the Myriad Pills Sacred Order, probably close to 80,000. However, after the first round of the illusory Demon Road, only 721 people remained. Not even 1%. This kind of elimination rate was simply terrifying. However, in the first round, you can be lucky. In the second round, it won't be so easy. Elder Dragon Mountain opened his mouth and waved his hand. At this moment, the majestic power of a half-saint surged out. The surrounding space was like a pool of clear water that had been thrown into by a huge rock, and it began to fluctuate violently. The second round is the last selection before the final ceremony. As an alchemist, not only does one have to have a strong primordial spirit, one also has to have sufficient control. And the control of an alchemist is reflected in Above the Flames. Elder Dragon Mountain spoke, and in the next moment, a spatial crack opened. Rolling and scorching air currents surged out from within. Chapter 1053. Second round, Heaven-Burning Fire Vein. Elder Long Shan said. Hearing this, everyone in Dansinaville who saw this scene was in an uproar. Heaven-Burning Fire Vein. Compared to the illusory Demon Road, it was even more infamous. However, it was not only used by alchemists, but it was indeed closely related to alchemists. However, in terms of danger, the illusory Demon Road was just a junior in front of the Heaven-Burning Fire Vein. It paled in comparison. Banten Simeon didn't go crazy this time. Some people's faces were solemn and filled with disbelief. The reputation of the Heaven-Burning Fire Vein was much stronger than the illusory Demon Road. There were terrifying flames everywhere that could burn a person's flesh and bones. Moreover, there were some flames that had already been cultivated and had given birth to intelligence. Here, not only did one have to have a strong control over flames, but one also had to have a strong enough martial strength. Otherwise, if one encountered a formed flame spirit, without strength, one could only wait for death. Elder Long Shan, although you are a half-step Saint Senior, this is a bit too much. At this moment, someone spoke with a solemn expression. The illusory Demon Road was fine. As long as one's alchemy cultivation was around the peak of the 7th grade, they could pass. The only difference was whether it was easy or not. However, the Heaven-Burning Fire Vein was different. If one didn't have enough martial strength, no matter how strong their alchemy cultivation was, it was easy to die here. So it's Qing Yin. Elder Long Shan glanced at the person who spoke, and a light flashed in his eyes as he nodded slightly. If an ordinary person said this to him, he wouldn't pay attention to him. However, although this Qing Yin alchemist was only a half-step minor saint alchemist, he was only slightly stronger than Dansinaville's Jianglin. However, his reputation in the alchemy world was much stronger than Jianglin's. Since 3,000 years ago, he had cultivated successfully and focused on improving various pill formulas, although he didn't create many 7th grade pill formulas. However, countless 3rd grade, 2nd grade, and 4th grade pill formulas had become more concise and powerful after passing through his hands. In the entire alchemy world, there was probably no one who dared to say that they had not learned from Qing Yin Alchemist. Although the Dragon Mountain Elder was also a senior, he still had to treat such a person with great caution. I have my own plans for Bantan Simeon. This time, I can withdraw at any time. Furthermore, every alchemist will be given a token with 10% of my power, which will be sealed within the Myriad Pills Sacred Token. Once I encounter danger and detonate the Myriad Pills Sacred Token, it will automatically release 10% of my power. Even Wu Zun at his peak will be able to resist it for a long time. Elder Longshan said. Hearing this, everyone's faces revealed a trace of surprise. 10% of the Dragon Mountain Elder's power was actually sealed within the Myriad Dan Sacred Token. 10% of his strength might seem insignificant, but in reality, who was the Dragon Mountain Elder? Half-saints had lived for tens of thousands of years. Whether it was martial arts or alchemy, They had already reached the peak of the half-saint level. He was only a hair's breadth away from the sage realm. Such an existence, even if it only had 10% of its strength, was enough to deal with Wu Zun at his peak. I see. Hearing this, the old man nodded slightly. I'm sorry. It's fine. Elder Longshan waved his hand, not minding. Although his seniority and strength were countless times stronger than the Green Cliff alchemist, he still had some respect for this person who had practically single-handedly pushed the development of the entire alchemy world. Although most of the high-tier alchemists could do it, who would give up on pursuing a higher realm of alchemy and spend half of their life improving a low-tier pill recipe. So there's a power to protect it. Hearing this, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Although the burning heaven fire vein was extremely dangerous, if they had 10% of the Dragon Mountain Elder's power to protect them, the degree of danger would undoubtedly be greatly reduced. However, the Myriad Pill Sacred Token is the proof that the Myriad Pill ceremony will continue. If you detonate the Myriad Pill Sacred Token, then it also means that you are eliminated, Elder Longshan said. Hearing this, everyone's faces became slightly solemn. Although they had the Myriad Pill Sacred Token to protect them, this Myriad Pill ceremony would not be smooth sailing in the end. Then, those who want to withdraw will automatically leave. Those who don't want to withdraw will enter the spatial door. Within the burning heaven fire vein, fighting is not prohibited, Elder Longshan said. Then, he was the first to step into the spatial door. Hearing this, everyone's eyes immediately lit up. In their eyes, rays of ferocious and greedy light bloomed. It was like a hungry wolf that had smelled the scent of blood. Their gazes towards everyone had become completely different. Then, everyone, I'll go first. Yi Yuan smiled sinisterly. He summoned the heavenly frost ice flame and enveloped his body. He was the second to walk into the burning heaven fire vein. Originally, Elder Longshan did not have to say this. Although it was not prohibited, most people would not fight with each other. However, if he said it, then the nature of the situation would be completely different. It could be said that some kind of restriction had been opened, allowing some people to become unrestrained. Master Yang, this Yuan is not only strong in alchemy, even his martial strength has reached the peak of Wu Zun's 5th level. Now that Elder Longshan has said this guy will definitely make a move on you in the burning heaven fire vein. The burning heaven fire vein also has special treatment for people who possess spiritual fire. As long as you don't enter the depths, the burning heaven fire vein won't have much lethality. At that time, he has the heavenly frost ice flame, a 7th level spiritual fire, and you only have a 6th level spiritual fire. Who knows, he might use this to make a move on you. Wu Qingchun opened his mouth and said with an extremely serious expression. They all knew about the grudge between Tianyang and the Medicine God sect. Those who had heard of the Lingshao Pavilion's medicine banquet also knew. Although after the event, Yi Yuan threatened everyone and forbade them from talking about those things. However, they could casually talk about what happened before. In Shaoan restaurant, Tianyang slapped Yao Hui's face until it was swollen. He did not care about Yi Yuan's threat at all. At the Lingshao Pavilion's medicine banquet, he went head-to-head with Yi Yuan, although they did not know the result. But it was very obvious. This time, Yi Yuan would definitely make a move on Tianyang. Is that so? Hearing this, Tianyang's eyebrows raised. This guy wants to make a move on me? What a coincidence. Tianyang also wanted to make a move on him. Yi Yuan had the heavenly frost ice flame, his 10,000 godly flame technique, and he had been longing for it for a long time. So it's best to avoid it. Wu Qingchun sighed. Dan Sinovel was still too weak for a tyrant like the Medicine God sect in the Eastern Sky Divine Land. Got it. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded. Then he summoned the true flames of destruction, enveloped himself, and stepped into the spatial door. Hearing this, Wu Qingchun smiled bitterly when he heard Tianyang's absent-mindedness. Chapter 1054. Surging hot auras came from all directions. The sky, the earth, the mountains, and even the rivers were all burning with terrifying flames. Red, yellow, black, blue, and even chaotic colors that couldn't be distinguished. This was the heaven-burning fire vein. As expected of the famous fire cultivation Holy Land in the eastern sky, Divine Land. Although it is incomparably dangerous, it also contains an incomparably huge amount of fire energy. For some cultivators who specialize in fire cultivation, this place is almost comparable to the cultivation Holy Land of a saint sect. Jean Daoping looked at the mountains and rivers of flames in front of him and praised. This heaven-burning fire vein was countless times more spectacular than any of the flames he had seen before. The sky and the earth seemed to be connected by the flames, and they were all the same color of flames. Water and fire, two things that were incompatible with each other, had merged into one in this place. It seemed that there was no conflict at all. Although the heaven-burning fire vein was famous in the eastern sky Divine Land. However, not everyone had been here before. Countless powerful alchemists who had passed the first round of the illusory demon road looked at the spectacular scene of the world of flames in front of them and were deeply intoxicated. Other than fire cultivators, only alchemists had the most contact with flames. With so many flames, it was simply a treasure trove full of opportunities for alchemists. How is it? At this time, Jiang Lin chuckled. This is the foundation of the eastern sky Divine Land. Although my Danseinaville is strong, compared to the terrifying foundation of the eastern sky Divine Land, it is still too weak. So, Daoping, I'm talking about you. Although your talent is rare, you can't be complacent because of it. In this world, there are countless people who can defeat you and me. Jiang Lin smiled. Hearing this, Jean Daoping also nodded. However, he couldn't help but glance at Tianyang, who was silently looking at the heaven-burning fire vein from the corner of his eyes. There was one standing next to him. He had just been beaten black and blue a few days ago. It was impossible for him to be complacent. The rules of the second round are very simple. At this time, Elder Longshan looked at the people around him and said indifferently, all 721 people had arrived. With the protection of the Myriad Pills Sacred Order, they naturally had nothing to fear. This burning heaven fire vein was not only a sacred cultivation ground for fire cultivators. For alchemists, it was also a rare treasure land. The heaven-burning fire vein was publicly recognized as the place that produced the most spiritual fire in the Xiantian Great World. Only 300 people will be able to enter the Myriad Pill ceremony. Out of the 721 people, only 300 will be able to stand on the stage of the Myriad Pill ceremony and display your alchemy skills. The Dragon Mountain old man spoke. Everyone's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. Only 300 out of 721, not even half of it. It could be seen how intense the competition this time would be. Thus, the second round will be a ranking. Within the burning heaven fire vein, there is a special or that is extremely useful for refining pill cauldrons. It is called the Burning Heaven Fire Crystal, and it is hidden in every corner of the burning heaven fire vein. And what you all need to do is to find the heaven-burning fire crystals from the heaven-burning fire vein. The more people there are, the higher your ranking will be. From the most to the least, your ranking will stop at 300. The Dragon Mountain old man said. Everyone's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. Heaven-burning fire crystal? They might not have been to the burning heaven fire vein before, but they had heard of the heaven-burning fire crystal, a good material for refining pill cauldrons. The places where the heaven-burning fire crystal were produced were all extremely dangerous and terrifying places. For example, the birthplace of spiritual fire, in the depths of the volcano, the source of the magma river. In fact, it was even in the depths of the heaven-burning fire vein. Furthermore, there will be a type of crystal or that looks extremely similar to the heaven-burning fire crystal, but its effect is far inferior to the heaven-burning fire crystal. It is called the flame crystal. If the flame crystal is treated as the heaven-burning fire crystal, it will not be counted in the ranking. The Dragon Mountain old man spoke indifferently. Everyone's expression changed upon hearing this. This was actually a test of one's ability? Interesting. It seems that Bantan Simun chose the heaven-burning fire vein after careful consideration. At this moment, The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly. Two of the most important points of an alchemist, the power of the primordial spirit and the ability to control the primordial spirit, had already been tested in the first round of the illusory demon road. The second round was a test of one's ability to control the flames, as well as their ability to appraise and the strength of the flames. This was the Shintian Great World, a world where martial arts flourished and where the strong preyed on the weak. The strength of the flames was an extremely unfair test. However, for ordinary people, there was no such thing as fairness. If your flames were strong, your alchemy would be strong. If your flames were weak, your alchemy would be weak. The end of the myriad pill ceremony was to select the strongest alchemist, not to select some alchemy genius. Then, the rules end here. When the Dragon Mountain old man said this, his eyes became turbid and ordinary. He leaned on his walking stick and walked to the side. He took out a recliner from his space bag, narrowed his eyes, and laid down comfortably. Time 1 month. Vantan Simeon will not interfere with anything in this month. If you die, even with the Myriad Pill Sacred Order, you will die. It only means that you are weak. The Dragon Mountain old man said. Then, he completely shut up and did not say another word. In the next moment, everyone moved. Sky-burning fire crystals were extremely rare and only existed in all kinds of dangerous places. In other words, every sky-burning fire crystal found in the sky-burning fire vein was one less. Naturally, they had to race against time and prepare to enter the top 300. Yang Tian, just you wait. Yi Yuan's figure flashed and disappeared from everyone's sight. With a sinister smile, he glanced at Tianyang. A voice transmission also entered Tianyang's ears. Obviously, this time in the sky-burning fire vein. Yi Yuan was definitely going to make a move on Tianyang. Not bad. Hearing this, Tianyang shrugged and could not be bothered with Yi Yuan. Although Yi Yuan had the strength of Wu Zun's peak 5th level realm. However, he also had the strength of Wu Zun's peak 3rd level realm. If they met in the sky-burning fire vein, it was still unknown who would win and who would lose. Then, Master Yang, we'll meet again in a month. Wu Qingchun clasped his fists, chose a direction, and rushed away. They didn't know how to find the sky-burning fire crystal, so they could only search at a terrifying speed. In just a few breaths of time, there was no one else around the spatial door. Only Tianyang was left. Tianyang glanced at the Dragon Mountain old man who was squinting on the recliner. An imperceptible light flashed across his eyes, and then he used the void-stepping secret technique and left. His lips moved, forming the shape of 2 words. Chapter 1055. The mountains were unbroken, and tens of thousands of flames were burning. He didn't know where the flames came from, but Tianyang could still feel the terrifying power of the flames in the air. The true destruction flame was restless, like a pack of wolves that saw their prey. It couldn't help but break out of his body and wantonly devour the surrounding flame power. It was different from other spiritual fires. Other spiritual fires, such as Yi Yuan's heavenly ice flame, were born from heaven and earth. They were born at this level and would always be at this level. The true destruction flame was different. The true destruction flame was formed by Tianyang through the destruction's spiritual fire, rising sun heavenly flame, and infinite poison ghastly flame. It was formed through the divine wilderness heavenly spirit techniques 10,000 divine flame. Therefore, the true destruction flame had no restrictions. However, it had long been born with the true destruction flame's innate desire to devour flames, to level up. Go back. Tianyang curled his lips. You're devouring this kind of rubbish flame power? Don't you think it's degrading? Don't say it's mine, the Tianji Sword Emperor, when you get out. Hearing this, the true destruction flame seemed to have a mind of its own. It shrank and quieted down. However, the outermost part of the sky-burning fire vein is indeed strong, but it's still not as strong as the inner part. It said that the sky-burning fire vein has the most spiritual fires born in the inner part. If I can level up the true destruction flame in this month, I'll have more confidence in the myriad pills ceremony. Tianyang muttered to himself. His talent in alchemy was extremely strong, but no matter how strong his talent was, it would take time to transform it into strength. Not counting his previous life, Tianyong had only been reborn for 10 to 20 years. This body was only 27 or 28 years old. Even with the support of many opportunities, his own accumulation was still too little. It was possible to fight with those peak 7th grade alchemists, but Tianyong would be defeated in seconds if he were to face those minor saint alchemists who could integrate the divine path into pills. However, if I can refine the Dragon King's body here, who knows, I might even be able to forge the minor saint grade pill. At that time, when a myriad pill ceremony begins, our chances will be even greater. Tianyong stuck out his tongue and licked his dry lips due to the scorching hot air around him. A faint smile appeared on his face. If that was the case, in that case, there would be a good show to watch in the myriad pill ceremony. Did the 10,000 divine flames make a move? Tianyong suddenly raised his eyebrows, revealing a trace of surprise. The 10,000 divine flame was a technique that came with Tianyong's divine desolate heaven spirit art, but it was very difficult to control. Normally, Tianyong could only control it as if it was his own arm when he was fusing with the spiritual fire. At other times, he would not be able to activate this method, even if he was beaten to death. But now, there was movement. In other words, there's a spirit flame. Tianyong's eyes lit up. In the next moment, he activated the secret skill of void treading and increased his speed to the limit. Then, he rushed in the direction that he sensed. Sky-burning fire crystal? That was nothing compared to the true destruction flames. So what if the burning heaven fire crystal was more important? Furthermore, if Tianyong wanted the heaven-burning fire crystal, did he need to mine it himself? That's it. Do you understand? Yi Yuan's cold and indifferent voice sounded from an inconspicuous flame hill in the heaven-burning fire vein. Yi Yuan's expression was frosty when facing Tianyong. Only when facing Tianyong and recalling how he had been slapped in the face would he be unable to suppress his anger and lose his composure. Yes, in front of Yi Yuan, two cultivators wearing black robes and releasing the aura of Wu Zun's peak 6th level nodded. We definitely won't disappoint, young master. I believe in you. Yi Yuan nodded slightly, then revealed a trace of a cold smile. Yang Tian, oh Yang Tian, so what if you're strong? In front of the enormous power of my medicine god sect, your talent and strength are nothing but a joke. This myriad pill ceremony is a stage for me. Yi Yuan, your appearance is unnecessary. Yi Yuan sneered, then flew in another direction. The two elders of the medicine god sect went to deal with Tianyong. As for himself, he still needed to collect the heaven-burning fire crystals. Otherwise, if the myriad pill ceremony failed, the people of the medicine god sect would definitely look down on him as the successor of the divine alchemy cauldron. At that time, it would be difficult to keep the position of sect master. I wonder how Yang Tian is doing. Chen Luan had a trace of worry on his face. To be honest, he still had high hopes for Tianyong. He was strong, and his temperament was calm, as if he didn't care about anything. When facing anyone, he was neither servile nor overbearing nor arrogant. Chen had a good impression of such a person. Unfortunately, the medicine god sect behind Yi Yuan was simply too powerful. He could only remain silent. Forget it. Heaven helps the worthy. After all, this is the myriad pill ceremony held by Bantan Simeon. The medicine god sect won't dare to be presumptuous. Chen Luan chuckled, then released the power of his primordial spirit. A colorless and transparent flame with an incomparably profound aura burned around him. Level 7 Spirit Fire, the fire of the origin spirit. Chen Luan had been keeping a low profile, but when it was time to truly erupt, only then would everyone know that he was not an ordinary figure among the three great rookies. There's a heaven-burning fire crystal there. This heaven-burning fire vein's power of fire is really terrifying. In the sky above the heaven-burning fire vein, a figure flitted through the void, flying toward a certain direction at extreme speed. Due to the power of the true flames of destruction and the uniqueness of the 10,000 divine flames technique, The heaven-burning fire vein was filled with fire poison in the air. It had no effect on him. Instead, it tempered his primordial spirit power and made it stronger. Along the way, Tianyang found who knew how many spirit fires. However, most of these spirit fires were only level 2 or 3. They might be useful when Tianyang was weak, but now they were somewhat useless. On the contrary, the spirit fire that he sensed earlier seemed to be no weaker than the true flames of destruction in terms of power. It's right ahead. A light flashed across Tianyang's eyes, and the great void sword embryo appeared in his hand. The myriad pill ceremony was a test of pill Tao. In reality, Tianyang completely treated it as fart. Naturally, he would use whatever was useful. Now that he was fighting for the spirit fire, if he still used the Bantan Simeon's rules to restrict himself, then he would be the world's top idiot. Kid, don't come to this heaven-burning fire vein if your hair is not fully grown yet. At this time, a wild roar came from Tianyang's side. In the next moment, a terrifying fist force broke through the void, ruthlessly attacking toward Tianyang. Everywhere it passed, the flames surged and the space shattered. Wu Zun Realm, Level 5 peak. As expected, there was someone. You're already on the verge of death. Why are you still fighting for a ball of fire? Tianyang smiled slightly, and the great void sword embryo in his hand casually swung out. It was extremely simple, but it seemed to coincide with the Saint Tao of heaven and earth. It carried endless power. It was just a sword. That fist force shattered with a bang. Chapter 1056. Which sage sect are you from? How could you break my punch? The burly man's face was full of fear as he looked at the great void sword embryo in Tianyang's hand. He was Wu Zun, who was at the peak of the 5th level. The aura that Tianyang had displayed before was at most at the peak of the 3rd level of the Wu Zun realm. Tianyang had crossed 2 levels and only used 1 sword move. To be able to break his punch, he must have some kind of treasure. This sword looked like it. And to be able to have such a treasure, he was most likely a disciple of a sage sect. A sage sect. Tianyang did not expect that in just a few seconds, the burly man's mind had so many twists and turns. After being stunned for a moment, he reacted. Did he think that because he broke this guy's punch with 1 sword move, he was regarded as a disciple of a sage sect? Back then, Zhang Qingqing seemed to think so too. So what if you don't admit it? To be able to have such a treasure, if you're not a disciple of a sage sect, what else can you be? However, even if you're a disciple of a sage sect, you can't do whatever you want in this sky-burning fire vein. If you want to get the spiritual fire, you have to rely on your own means. The burly man snorted coldly. Then his figure flashed, and he left. Obviously, the burly man knew that he was no match for him, so he did not have the intention to continue the fight and left in an instant. After all, although the previous punch was not considered full strength, it was still 70 to 80% of his strength. Tianyang casually broke his punch with a sword move. In terms of strength, he was definitely not Tianyang's opponent. Instead of staying to be abused, it was better to leave early. Perhaps he could even escape with the spiritual fire. There were many spiritual fires in the sky-burning fire vein. However, there were not many spiritual fires that could tempt a martial honored realm elite. He really ran away. Tianyang glanced at the burly man's figure that disappeared into the horizon in an instant and shook his head. This person probably did not see that Tianyang had unintentionally displayed the Sage Realm Sword principle and thought that Tianyang had relied on the Great Void Sword embryo in his hand. Otherwise, this guy would not have dared to be so unyielding before leaving. However, it didn't matter if he was unyielding or not. Even if he did, he would still kill if he had to. However, I'm afraid that many people have their eyes on this spiritual fire. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly. In the next moment, his figure flickered as he used the void-treading secret technique. In an instant, his speed soared to a terrifying level, and he was getting closer and closer to the spiritual fire. We meet again, Long Tianqing. In a valley of the burning heaven fire vein, a black-haired man with a cold and handsome face spoke. He held the scabbard in his left hand and the hilt in his right hand, as if he was prepared to pull it out at any moment. His tone was so cold that it seemed to have come from the underworld. Solitary demon, swordsman Lin Tianchong, I didn't expect you to come to the burning heaven-fire vein as well. Opposite the handsome man, an incomparably handsome man with long golden hair that reaches waist, said with a smile. There were no weapons in his hands. However, the aura emanating from his body was not the slightest bit weaker than that of the handsome man with a long saber. I'm afraid that you've killed many disciples of the major forces recently and are wanted very badly. Yet, you still dare to come to the burning heaven-fire vein. Aren't you afraid that my roar will attract everyone around? At that time, you won't be able to escape even if you have wings. The handsome man smiled as if the name of the man in front of him was more attractive than the spiritual fire that was about to appear. You speak as if the name of a Dragon Clan cultivator isn't that attractive. The handsome man, Lin Tianchong, curled his lips into a mocking smile. Opposite Lin Tianchong, the Dragon Clan cultivator, Long Tianqing's face gradually darkened. The aura that permeated the air between them was like a needle against an awn. Demonic Lone Saber Master Lin Tianchong, Dragon Slayer Long Tianqing. In the distance, someone's face turned pale as he looked at the two people fighting in the valley in disbelief. Although these two people did not seem to be outstanding, they were terrifying existences with a fierce reputation in the Eastern Sky Divine region. The demonic Lone Saber Master was alone and cultivated the demonic Tao. Countless cultivators of the same level had died in his hands. Even the disciples of the sage sects were killed by him. Therefore, Lin Tianchong was wanted by countless sage sects. Just by providing an effective address, one could obtain a supreme-grade spiritual weapon that was close to a semi-sage weapon as a reward. If one could obtain Lin Tianchong's head, many sage sects would be willing to take out a semi-sage weapon or even a semi-sage weapon embryo as a thank you. This showed how terrifying Lin Tianchong was. As for the Dragon Clan cultivator, Long Tianqing, who was confronting Lin Tianchong, he was not an ordinary person either. Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer. Wu Zun of the Dragon Clan, who cultivated the demonic Tao. A brutal cultivator who slaughtered cities and destroyed sects. These two people, one with bloody and terrifying means, appeared in the burning heaven-fire vein together at this moment. That person could imagine, if the news were to spread, what kind of impact would it bring to the burning heaven-fire vein? There's also a little ant. Long Tianqing smiled faintly. His handsome face revealed a trace of evil as he stretched out his hand. The dragon pointed his finger. A bright light, like the most dazzling light in this mortal world, swept across the space. Just when no one had the time to react, it pierced through that person's forehead. The cultivator who was just about to run away had his head blown up by the finger. Lin Tianchong's face turned slightly ugly. How could Long Tianqing attack a passerby in front of him? Could it be that Long Tianqing had obtained some kind of opportunity recently, which made him fearless in front of him? Why do you care about a passerby? Just like those disciples of the sage sects that you killed, it's fine if you killed him. Long Tianqing said indifferently. Hearing this, Lin Tianchong's face turned cold. The people I kill are all people who deserve to be killed. To me, that person is also a person who deserves to be killed. Long Tianqing chuckled and then turned around. There was a trace of desire in his eyes. His understanding was much more than Lin Tianchong's. He also knew what level the spiritual fire that was about to be born in this valley was. Not only was it at the peak of rank 6, but it was also half a step to rank 7. This level of existence was enough for Wu Zun like Long Tianqing to use until he reached the sage-to-be realm. He must not miss this spiritual fire. With me here, you won't get it so easily. Feeling the fluctuation from Long Tianqing, Lin Tianchong's face darkened. He pulled out the long saber in his hand, revealing a sharp saber light. He, Lin Tianchong, was also determined to get this spiritual fire. Ridiculous! Long Tianqing sneered. His figure flashed and instantly disappeared from the spot. At the moment when Long Tianqing moved, a terrifying flame dragon soared into the sky. True Dragonheart fire. Long Tianqing laughed and formed a seal with his hands. Fly towards the strongest dragon clan bloodline here. This spiritual fire was born to be mine. Long Tianqing laughed heartily. The spiritual fire, which resembled a real dragon, trembled slightly as it turned its head towards Long Tianqing. Seeing this, Lin Tianqiang's face changed greatly. This flame was related to the dragon clan? What a waste of time. Lin Tianqiang cursed. Who here could compete with the dragon clan bloodline with the supreme dragon slayer? Come here. Long Tianqing laughed and formed a seal with his hands. At this moment, the true Dragonheart fire seemed to have discovered something. It charged towards Long Tianqing fiercely. Ha! Seeing this, Long Tianqing laughed loudly. It's effortless. Whoosh! The sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. The true Dragonheart flame directly passed through Long Tianqing and flew behind him. Finally, it stopped in front of a young man. Chapter 1057. The True Dragonheart Fire. It required a dragon sage to fall in a place where the power of fire was extremely abundant. By chance, the remnant blood of the dragon clan would fuse with the surging power of fire to form a spiritual fire. The lowest level was the peak of the 6th rank. According to the information Long Tianqing had obtained, the dragon sage had fallen 300,000 years ago. After 300,000 years of nourishment, the true Dragonheart fire formed had reached a terrifying level of power. If he brought it back and fed it day and night with the divine dragon blood essence, it might even advance to a 7th rank spiritual fire. But ran away? Did the Dragonheart seal lose its effect? Long Tianqing did not see Tianyang immediately. Instead, he stared blankly at the empty space in front of him and could not help but doubt himself. Most spiritual fires above the 6th rank had their own consciousness and were unwilling to be refined by others. However, Long Tianqing had paid a huge price to obtain the Dragonheart seal from the True Dragon Palace. It could be said that it was the natural nemesis of the True Dragonheart fire. How could it lose its effect? It's a human. Long Tianqing reacted instantly and turned his head with a ferocious expression toward Tianyang. At the same time, a terrifying aura erupted from Long Tianqing's body. It's you. Long Tianqing's expression was ferocious as he stared at Tianyang. His eyes seemed to spit fire. He had spent hundreds of years before he managed to deduce that the true Dragonheart fire might exist in this place from a few clues. He had even accumulated dozens of years of merit points to exchange for the Dragonheart seal art from the True Dragon Palace. All for the true Dragonheart fire. In the end, the true Dragonheart fire had run into someone else's hands. Lin Tianqiang, you won't be able to refine the true Dragonheart fire even if I give it to you. Why don't we join forces and kill this kid? Long Tianqing's face was filled with violent killing intent. He immediately executed his movement technique and charged toward Tianyang. At the same time, he growled. Lin Tianqiang was a little stunned when he saw Long Tianqing's failure. However, after hearing Long Tianqing's words, he revealed a thoughtful expression. Reward. A part of the sacred martial that I found in the True Dragon Palace. Deal. Lin Tianqiang nodded. Then, still holding the scabbard and the hilt, his figure flashed as he charged toward Tianyang. At this moment, the enraged Long Tianqing had already unleashed his surging dragon power. True Dragon Sky Tyrant Fist. Long Tianqing roared angrily and punched out. The roar of a dragon echoed in all directions. The torrential dragon force was like an inexhaustible river, surging over. That terrifying and suffocating dragon force made one's heart tremble. True Dragon Sky Tyrant Fist. A peerless heaven-ranked martial skill was also known as a half-saint martial skill. It seems that Long Tianqing's anger has reached a certain level. Seeing this, Lin Tianqiang nodded slightly with a tinge of fear on his face. Although they were temporarily working together, it was also because of the deal. In the depths of his heart, Lin Tianqiang was still extremely fearful of Long Tianqing. If Long Tianqing was too strong, he would be in danger. However, Let's do our best for now, Lin Tianchong muttered to himself. At this moment, he was already 300 meters above Tianyang. Although this distance was not considered safe for ordinary cultivators, it was not considered dangerous either. Sword drawl. At this moment, rays of demonic light shone from Lin Tianchong's body. The long saber in his hand flashed with a snow-white saber light. The terrifying blade, hidden in the scabbard, was unsheathed. At this moment, the sharp, powerful, and suffocating saber light was like a crescent moon as it charged toward Tianyang. Sword drawl. At this moment, Long Tianqing's furious true dragon sky tyrant fist also charged toward him, one on the left and one on the right. The two greatest villains of the Eastern Sky Divine Prefecture attacked Tianyang, who was at the peak of LV3 Wuzun realm. Interesting. Although he did not understand why the true dragon heart fire would run toward him like a madman. However, since he had already obtained the spiritual fire, there was no reason to hand it over. Fleeting youth. In an instant, the sword came out, the sword slashed, and the sword returned. Light flashed, and light extinguished. There was not even a blink of an eye or a flick of a finger. A sword with the surging power of life and death slashed at their attacks and shattered them. How is this possible? Sword draw broken. True dragon sky tyrant fist broken. Tianyang still had time to free up his hand and put the true dragon heart fire that was blocking his vision into his space bag. Long Tianqing's eyes were wide open. Even so, it could not explain the shock in his heart, although this was not his strongest punch. However, it was definitely one of the strongest moves he had ever used. However, it was broken by Tianyang and the lone demon swordsman Lin Tianchong's sword draw. Saber draw. That was a terrifying saber strike that even Long Tianqing had no choice but to avoid. He's actually so strong. Seeing this, Lin Tianchong's pupils contracted and his face was filled with disbelief. Although he was not the strongest Wuzun realm swordsman in the Eastern Sky Divine Prefecture, however, he was definitely one of the best. Among the disciples of the sage's sects that he had killed, there was no lack of people who cultivated swordsmanship. Some of them were even stronger than him. However, they still died under his sword. Most of them had died under this incomparably swift and fierce saber slash that carried boundless aura. Now, this sword draw, which could be considered his fastest and strongest killing move, was broken by another person together with another move. There's something wrong with this person. Long Tianqing's face darkened. He gathered the dragon power in his hand, and in the next moment, his speed increased rapidly. However, no matter how strong he is, he's only at the peak of Wuzun realm. The true dragon heart fire belongs to me, the venerable dragon slayer. Long Tianqing roared, and his eyes released a ferocious and violent killing intent. An extremely terrifying punch was thrown out ruthlessly. Roar! An earth-shattering dragon's roar resounded between heaven and earth. In the sky-burning fire vein, countless burning flames seemed to be affected by this invisible dragon's roar. They were like grass under a storm, swaying unsteadily. Even the spiritual fire could only tremble in the face of this punch. Sacred Martial. True dragon sky breaking fist. He's actually so furious? Seeing this, Lin Tianchong's face revealed a trace of shock. The power of Long Tianqing's punch was extremely terrifying. However, if it was not a critical moment, Long Tianqing would not casually use it. After all, this punch consumed a lot of energy. However, in order to deal with a young man at the peak of Wuzun realm, he actually used it. That's right. He's only at the peak of Wuzun realm. No matter how strong he is, how strong can he be? Lin Tianchong smiled slightly. In the next moment, streaks of black air swirled around the long sword in his hand. The aura on his body changed abruptly. Heaven-class upper demonic technique, solitary demonic saber technique, activated. One slash cut him in half. Lin Tianchong's figure flashed and slashed out with his saber. The space exploded inch by inch. On the other hand, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and revealed a trace of a smile. This is what you're relying on? In the next moment, the great void sword embryo in his hand released streaks of dazzling xinguang. Sage stage, sword principle, sword breaking 9 desolates. Chapter 10:58. Sword breaking 9 barons. Tianyang's eyes suddenly shone with a sharp light, and the great void sword embryo in his hand did the same. The monstrous sword light seemed as if it was going to tear the heavens and earth apart. It carried with it an indomitable and terrifying aura. The sword breaking 9 barons was the second move that Tianyang had created in the past 3 months that belonged to the Saint Realm sword principle. It was different from the simple one-sword flying celestial, which contained the true essence of the Saint Realm sword principle. The sword-breaking 9 barons integrated the Saint Realm sword principle into the sword perfectly. There was nothing fancy about it. It was just a direct attack. However, the terrifying aura that was contained within his wide movements was far from what an ordinary sword move could compare to. It was the same even for a saint martial artist. Stubborn resistance. Long Tianqing's face showed a trace of indifference. He was far from the Saint Realm. There was a huge gap between him and the half-Saint Realm. He had not even touched the edge of the Saint Realm, so he naturally could not sense the surging power of the Saint Path in Tianyang's attack. Real dragon breaking the firmament. Long Tianqing roared angrily, and a monstrous dragon power gathered and turned into a terrifying dragon that was thousands of meters long. The dragon scales shone with golden light, and the dragon claws were like mountains. The dragon eyes were clearly formed by the dragon power, but they seemed to have spiritual intelligence. Deep in the eyes, there seemed to be disdain for the world and arrogance that mocked everything. The arrogance of the dragon clan. One sword breaking Nether River. At this moment, Lin Tianchong suddenly spoke, and the long saber wrapped in black qi slashed out fiercely. One sword, one fist. It met Tianyang's sword. The person who had used the sword and fist was already at the peak of LV6 Wuzun realm. Tianyang was only at the peak of LV3 Wuzun realm. No matter how many tricks this kid has, he can only die in the face of true strength. He seemed to have foreseen that Tianyang's sword was useless, and that he would be drowned in the sea of sword light and dragon power. Long Tianqing could not help but laugh. On the other hand, Lin Tianchong's face was expressionless. It was true that Long Tianqing was a dragon, and Tianyang was a human like him. But so what? In the face of benefits, saying that those who are not of our race will have different intentions was all bullshit. Those who are not of our race will have different intentions was more like it. The reason why Lin Tianchong was known as the Lone Demon Swordsman was not only because he had killed a few Sage's sect disciples. Although there was no one like the revered dragon slayer Long Tianqing, who had the terrifying battle record of massacring an entire city and exterminating an entire clan at the drop of a hat. However, ever since Lin Tianchong made a name for himself, the number of people who died in Lin Tianchong's hands was about the same as Long Tianqing's. Their hands were stained with blood. Why would they care about a human whom they had never met and who would compete with them for the opportunity to obtain the spiritual fire? True Dragonheart fire, come back. At that moment, Long Tianqing condensed the Dragonheart seal again as he attempted to recall the true dragon's heart fire, which had been put into Tianyang's interspatial bag. However, it was even more useless than before. It was like the true Dragonheart flame had already found a home. Even though Tianyang was drowned in the quintessence attack, he did not move at all. Damn it! Long Tianqing's face instantly flushed red. Could it be that the Dragonheart seal had lost its effect? It's not lost its effect. It's that guy. He's not dead yet. Lin Tianchong, who was a bystander, immediately reacted and shouted. At that moment, a sword with an extremely terrifying sword principle power pierced through space and ruthlessly attacked. Its speed was extremely fast. Even their primordial spirit power was cut open by this extremely fast sword and was destroyed by the Sage Stage sword principle power contained within it. Flying immortal sword. Puffed. Rip. Blood splattered, and his arm was thrown away. Long Tianqing's right arm was completely severed by this sword. If not for Long Tianqing's quick reflexes, the sword would have pierced his heart. How could it be so strong? Long Tianqing was completely dumbfounded. In his eyes, the energy fluctuation contained in the sword just now was not too strong. Although it was far stronger than Wu Zun, who was at the peak of LV3, it was impossible for it to break through his defense. In fact, not only did it break through his defense, but even his arm was directly severed. This is... At that moment, Lin Tianchong suddenly trembled and his face was extremely pale. This is... What is it? Long Tianqing growled. At that moment, Lin Tianchong roared. It's the sage stage. In the next moment, Lin Tianchong did not hesitate and directly rushed into the sky. He abandoned Long Tianqing and charged towards the depths of the sky-burning fire vein. He had killed many disciples of the sage sects. However, nearly 90% of them were nominal disciples, and the remaining 10% were just ordinary disciples. In Wu Zun's realm, those who had comprehended the sage stage could already become inner disciples. In Wu Zun's realm, those who had comprehended the sage stage and could use it, those who were at the peak of the inner sect could already become elders. This kind of person, no matter how low his cultivation was, must not be provoked. Sage stage. Long Tianqing was stunned, and then his expression changed drastically. Wu Zun, who was at the peak of LV3, was using the sage stage? Try to run? At that moment, Tianyang glanced at Lin Tianchong, who had escaped hundreds of miles away in the blink of an eye, and the corner of his mouth curled into a slight smile. If he had faced these two people 3 months ago, he might have been able to win, but it would have been extremely difficult. However, it was different now. In 3 months, Tianyang had refined the sage stage sword principle and the path of life and death to the point of perfection. He was already close to the sage stage. He had also created another sword technique in the sage stage sword principle, the 9 Baron sword. One sword, the 9 Baron sword. If he still could not deal with these two people who had underestimated him, then the sage stage was not worthy of the word sage. Are you trying to compete with my sword to see who can fly faster? Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, Lin Tianchong, who had just flown out, suddenly trembled. He stopped. Even if he burned his blood essence, ignited his primordial spirit, and unleashed all his true ether, it was impossible for him to fly faster than the flying sword. The flying sword of the sage stage sword principle. I heard that you are called Supreme Dragon Slayer. At this moment, Tianyang turned his head and looked at Long Tianqing, who had lost an arm, and chuckled. At this moment, Long Tianqing had long been stunned by the two words sage stage. He did not even hear Tianyang's words. I don't like it. How about changing it to Supreme Dragon Slayer? Tianyang chuckled. At this moment, Long Tianqing suddenly woke up. Yes, yes, yes. Long Tianqing hurriedly said, I will change it now. I am Supreme Dragon Slayer. My name is Supreme Dragon Slayer. Not bad. Tianyang smiled slightly. This way, I can peacefully send you to your death. What? Long Tianqing's expression changed drastically. Just as he spat out half a word, he was suddenly struck by a sword. It pierced through his forehead. His dragon soul was shattered. This, Lin Tianchong, who was far away, was completely dumbfounded. At this moment, Tianyang's voice, which sounded like it came from hell, sounded faintly. You are a human? Yes. Lin Tianchong's muscles suddenly tightened as he sighed in his heart. Fortunately, he was from a human race. Since you are from a human race, then Tianyang's words were like rain from the sky, making Lin Tianchong overjoyed. I can let you die a little more painfully. At this moment, Chapter 1059. I'll make your death a little more painful. Tianyang's voice was heard with a slight smile. In the next moment, 7 stars with surging primordial spirit power appeared beside Lin Tianchong. W.H. At Lin Tianchong was dumbfounded. He thought he had misheard. However, the surrounding primordial spirit power that was about to be spat out by the terrifying stars told him. He did not mishear. No, Lin Tianchong roared. His true origin burned. Primordial spirit. Ignite. Blood essence burnt. However, at this moment, Lin Tianqiong's aura broke through the limit of Wu Zun's peak stage 6 and broke through to Wu Zun's stage 7. You want me to die? Don't think you'll have an easy time. Lin Tianqiong roared. The long saber in his hand shone with a pitch-black light. He charged at Tianyang with a speed that could shatter any mountain. Star-streaked sky. The saber was like a meteor sweeping across the sky. It was also like a star disappearing in the universe. The streak of saber light seemed to sever heaven and earth. Die. He ignited his true origin, primordial spirit, and blood essence. No matter what treasure Lin Tianqiong had, even if it was a sacred-grade pill, it would not be able to save Lin Tianqiong. Therefore, Lin Tianqiong only had one thought. Before he died, he wanted to drag Tianyang down with him. Star imprisonment. Tianyang smiled. 7 stars' secret technique, 7 stars attack. Shatter the heavens and destroy the gods. Star chains flew out from the stars and blocked in front of Lin Tianqiong. Break! Lin Tianqiong roared as his saber cleaved apart the astral chains. Die! Lin Tianqiong roared. His saber released a sky full of flames and slashed at Tianyang's head. There was no longer any rationality in his eyes. There was only madness from hatred. Haha. However, Tianyang's expression remained as calm as ever, and his eyes were as calm as an ancient well. It was as if he was watching a clown's performance that was not funny at all. Do you know why I'm so fearless? Tianyang suddenly spoke. Lin Tianqiong was stunned. That's right. After all, Tianyang's cultivation was only at the peak of Wu Zun's 3rd realm. Even if he had the same path, he couldn't be that strong. Why was he so calm? Because, you rascal, you're still standing there. Tianyang's lips curled into a brilliant smile. The next moment, heaven and earth were completely destroyed. Everything around him shattered into pieces and scattered in all directions. It was as if an illusion had become reality. Lin Tianqiong only realized it at this moment. Not only did he fail to kill Tianyang, but he also failed to do so. Instead, even his saber had fallen to the ground. His entire body was bound by the astral chains. How is this possible? Lin Tianqiong was stunned. What happened? Shouldn't he use his blood-stained ultimate kill and directly kill this arrogant brat? Why was he here? Furthermore, he was caught by this brat. You have to thank this thing. Otherwise, your true essence, blood essence, and primordial spirit would burn together and you would definitely die. Moreover, your death would be very painful. Tianyang smiled slightly. With a shake of his hand, a pitch-black ancient book shining with a ghostly purple light appeared in his hand. Seeing this, Lin Tianqiong's pupils constricted. His voice was trembling and hoarse. Fantasy fiend, ancient book? You got it right. Unfortunately, there's no prize. Tianyang smiled slightly and then flicked his finger. The astral chains suddenly tightened. The shape of the astral chains was controlled by Tianyang. After all, it was condensed by Tianyang's primordial spirit. Tianyang could make the astral chains into whatever shape he wanted them to take. Now, the astral chains were. They were as thin as cicadas' wings and extremely sharp. Not only the physical body, but also the primordial spirit. I curse you! I curse you! Lin Tianqiong roared crazily. Indeed, it was as Tianyang thought. Lin Tianqiong's death was not peaceful. Of course, the fact that he was still alive was the result of Tianyang's plan. Wouldn't it be more comfortable to die so easily? Tianyang had calculated the strength of Lin Tianqiong's physical body and primordial spirit power. He had estimated how his astral chains could kill him. The data was very precise, down to the minute. Therefore, Lin Tianqiong had to continue suffering like this for at least 320 minutes. Curse, that thing will have to go through my fantasy fiend ancient book first. Tianyang shrugged and soared into the sky, leaving Lin Tianqiong alone to suffer. He was not afraid of having an accomplice to save Lin Tianqiong. Once someone came into contact with the astral chains, be it physical body or primordial spirit, the astral chains would automatically explode, instantly taking Lin Tianqiong's life. Tianyang was never a soft-hearted person. The Fantasy Fiend Ancient Book is indeed worthy of being called the Fantasy Fiend Ancient Book. It has become so strong after absorbing the resentment of the demon sovereign on the Fantasy Fiend Road. Tianyong muttered to himself. This time, he could have used both the Tao of Life and Death and the Saint's Sword Principle to deal with Lin Tianchong, who was going all out. However, he suddenly thought of this treasure that he had never had a chance to use. The effect was actually so amazing. The dignified, lone demon swordsman, who had slashed 1,000,000 times, was fooled by him. However, it is only useful against those who are afraid and want to fight with their lives on the line and let their guard down. Otherwise, the effect of the Fantasy Fiend Ancient Book will be greatly reduced with just a little bit of caution. Tianyong shook his head and put away the Fantasy Fiend Ancient Book. The Fantasy Fiend Ancient Book was indeed powerful, but Tianyong did not think that he could be invincible with it. He was still very rational. After all, he had never cultivated the Tao of Illusion and only knew a little about the Fantasy Fiend Ancient Book. Instead of being invincible, he might as well use it as a pillow and be invincible in his dreams. However, I don't know why this spiritual fire ran to my side, but it's too easy for me. Tianyong smiled slightly and took out the true dragon heart fire from the space bag. Long Tianqing probably did not know until he died. His dragon heart seal was not wrong, and Tianyong had never disturbed him. It was just that he had roared to find the strongest dragon clan bloodline. Tianyong's ancestral dragon body happened to be a little stronger than the revered dragon slayer dog. Fortunately, this guy did not know before he died. Otherwise, he would probably cry to death in the underworld. The true dragon heart fire, a half-step 7th order spiritual fire. This is rarer than most 7th order spiritual fires. This guy probably took a long time to find it. Unfortunately, it's a gift to me. Tianyong chuckled. At this time, Tianyong finally found a suitable place for seclusion. Inside the sky-burning fire vein, there was an uninhabited volcano with a radius of 10,000 miles. There was no spiritual fire, nor was there a flame spirit. There was only the majestic power of fire that could be seen everywhere. This time, I'll refine it, and at the same time, I'll also improve my true essence and physical body. Tianyong smiled slightly, held the true dragon heart fire in his hand, and directly rushed into the mouth of the volcano. Flame spewed out. The 10,000 elephant divine flame was activated. Chapter 1060. True Destruction Flames. Peak Grade 6 Spiritual Fire. True Dragon Heart Fire. Half a step to Grade 7 Spiritual Fire. At this moment, 2 balls of flames were burning on Tianyong's hands, one on the left and one on the right. The outer flames of the flames fluttered continuously and unconsciously rushed towards each other. When the flames touched, terrifying energy burst forth. The level of energy. Instantly, the surrounding magma that had not changed for thousands of years melted even more thoroughly. Moreover, the most shocking thing was that, compared to the true dragon heart fire, the true destruction flames that were slightly weaker were the most aggressive. The black flames released sparks continuously and charged towards the true dragon heart fire. As for the true dragon heart fire, it stayed quietly on Tianyong's left hand like a miniature fire dragon. The flames fluctuated slightly and extinguished the sparks of the true destruction flames that were flying towards it. However, it did not affect the true destruction flames at all. Didn't they say that the true dragon heart fire is condensed from the blood of the dragon race and is incomparably violent? Why is this true dragon heart fire even more docile than a cat? Tianyong raised his brows and revealed a look of surprise. However, he did not know. Long Tianqing had paid a huge price to obtain the dragon heart seal. It was not as simple as attracting the spiritual fire. If that was the case, provocation was also fine. There was no need to pay such a huge price at all. As such, Long Tianqing had prepared for decades. The true function of the dragon heart seal. It was to reduce the offensive power of the true dragon heart fire to the weakest level. It was as if the person chosen by the dragon heart seal was the dragon saint. If not for that, Tianyong would have caused the true dragon heart fire to explode in rage when he placed the true destruction flames beside it. How would he still have the time to think about this and that? However, although the true dragon heart fire was so docile, Tianyang did not let down his guard at all. After all, no matter how docile the spiritual fire was, it would still reveal its ferocious fangs when he was about to devour it. Spiritual fire, bearing the fortune of heaven and earth and seizing the fortune of the world, was fierce and explosive. Once it came into contact with the source, its fury would burn everything. No matter how confident Tianyang was, it was impossible for him to think that he had some sort of tyrannical aura that could completely subdue the true dragon heart flame. 10,000 divine flames. Tianyang's face sank as he spat out 4 words. Rays of mysterious and powerful light appeared in his hands. The 10,000 elephant divine flame was an all-encompassing technique that fused all kinds of flames. After Tianyang had comprehended the myriad Tao, the power of the divine flame of all things had greatly increased. At this moment, he could forcefully merge the true dragon heart fire and the true flames of destruction into one. Pa! Tianyang's palms suddenly closed together. Boom! Terrifying energy shock waves erupted from Tianyang's palm. Spiritual fire fuse. Streams of terrifying energy, like a chaotic flow without any rules, rampaged between Tianyang's hands. Some of them even entered Tianyang's body and wreaked havoc in Tianyang's internal organs. Spiritual fire was extremely domineering and at the same time, extremely arrogant. Spiritual fires might not have intelligence, and even their spirituality was very shallow. However, in the depths of every spiritual fire, there was something. Born from the heavens and earth, it looked down on the world, and it was an arrogance that ruled over everything. The true dragon heart flame was slightly special. Not only had it absorbed the power of the heavens and earth, but had also fused with the blood of a dragon sage's heart. That arrogance was only stronger than ordinary spiritual fires. Boom! Boom! Terrifying energy shockwaves directly hit Tianyang's body. Even with the strength of the ancestral dragon body, Tianyang could not help but groan as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The main body was undoubtedly the true flames of destruction. As strong as the true dragon heart flame was, it could only become a part of the true flames of destruction. However, the true flames of destruction were still slightly weaker than the true dragon heart flame. The backlash from forcefully devouring it was unimaginable. Boom, boom, boom. Another terrifying energy shockwave came. That enormous force seemed to want to burst Tianyang's palms. The two spiritual fires would rather die than fuse. 10,000 divine flames. At this moment, Tianyang roared. Strange and mysterious energy bloomed between the heavens and earth. Between the true flames of destruction and the true dragon heart flame that were fighting each other, a force suddenly appeared. It seemed to want to fuse with each other. The power of the 10,000 divine flames began to circulate. The true flames of destruction and the true dragon heart flame also gradually began to fuse. At this moment, Tianyang's lips curled slightly, and a chuckle came from his mouth. 9 refined dragon body, 7th refinement. The space bag opened and attracted the heavenly tribulation in advance. It was a true peak grade 7 divine pill. Song Long's overlord pill had appeared. At this moment, the 108 ancestral dragon patterns on the surface of Tianyang's body released an incomparably bright light. Then Tianyang opened his mouth. The Song Long's overlord pill immediately turned into a stream of light and rushed into his body. Bang! A terrifying explosion sounded in Tianyang's body. The moment that Song Long's overlord pill entered his body, it turned into a terrifying explosion. Tianyang instantly spat out a mouthful of blood, but his expression was still calm. The way to consume that Song Long's overlord pill was like this. The medicinal power was absorbed, but the way to absorb it was continuously withstanding the explosion. Bang, bang, bang. The medicinal power exploded again and again, making Tianyang's face even paler. However, the majestic medicinal power in that Song Long's overlord pill also merged into his body. The strength of his physical body was rapidly strengthening at a terrifying speed. Bang! Another loud bang sounded. Tianyang's hands trembled. The two spiritual fires that were fusing suddenly trembled violently. Then, he directly lost control. The true flames of destruction carried the power of the true Dragonheart flame. There were also traces of the true flames of destruction's aura in the true Dragonheart flame. The two flames were still fusing, but they were not under Tianyang's control. They directly magnified their power to the limit. Even Tianyang himself will be burned by the flames. I didn't expect the medicinal power of the Zonglong's overlord pill to be so domineering. Seeing this, Tianyang shook his head and laughed bitterly. As expected of a divine pill. If that's the case, then I can only use the last move. Tianyang sighed softly. In his body, the naturally terminated meridians shone faintly. The terrifying power of the divine wilderness heaven spirit art was released. True essence surged like a river, stirring up the wind and clouds. Break! 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 Tianyang roared. The 9 refined dragon body was activated to the limit. The moment he opened his mouth, the space bag opened, and dozens of jade bottles exploded. Streams of divine dragon blood poured into Tianyang's body. The ancestral dragon mark on the surface of Tianyang's body was also splitting and strengthening at a speed visible to the naked eye. Fuse! Tianyang roared again and activated the 10,000 elephant god flame. Boom! The true flames of destruction and the true Dragonheart flame burned fiercely and once again entered a state of fusion. However, Tianyang's body was almost char-black. Tianyang's expression was still firm. Streams of tearing and burning pain that was enough to make any cultivator with a firm will go crazy was released and wreaked havoc on Tianyang's body. However, Tianyang's expression did not change as he roared again. Break! How could the path of the strong be smooth? Go against the heavens and step on the heavens to achieve the Tao. True essence aura rose crazily. The divine wilderness heaven spirit art released streams of divine power. Finally, physical body, spiritual fire, true essence, all sublimated together. Physical body, the 7th refinement of the 9 refined dragon body, Dragon King body, spiritual fire. Level 7 spiritual fire, true flames of destruction, true essence,